Okay, looks like we're live. It takes a few minutes to get all this set up. Alright, so how is everybody this morning? Great. It is Wednesday. So yesterday we had another employer stop by and asked for me to give you, another one wants to come in on graduation day and recruit. Guys, if I let everybody come in, we wouldn't get graduation done because it would be a full-on job fair here. Everybody wants you. You're not gonna have any trouble finding a job, trust me. In fact, you're probably gonna find more jobs than you want. Case in point. But I'll put the information over here. I'll give you some more information on it. We'll get you all set up. Okay, just get that running. Okay. Yeah, there's lots and lots of opportunities out there for you right now. You just give me about one more minute. I need to take care of something really quickly and then we will get started. Go ahead and get your white books open for chapter 6 so I can get your scores. I just need to print something off here. 7, sorry, 7. Sorry about that. Yeah, no, 7. This is 6. Okay, I got that printing, so we are good to start. Good morning. Good morning. Hey. So last night or between Monday and yesterday or today, you had chapter 7 to read in your white or in your blue book and the test in the white book on page 138. Does anybody have any questions on this? Any questions? That's fine. That's fine. Let me just go through this real quick and see here. Sue, how'd you do? Do you have 6 for me? Thank you. Stephen?
95 on 7, 85 on 6.
Do you have 5 for me too, please? Thank you. I appreciate that. Cynthia?
100.
Okay, very good. And Leah will get yours later. All right. So anybody have any questions? No questions? Okay. All right. Do you have any questions on what we have learned so far? You get 3 skills. You're going to have 1 ADL skill. We're actually going to talk about this right now, right? So we're going to talk about skills timing. Great segue. So in your white book, go to page 56 for me. That's a good segue into what I'm about to talk to you about. Okay. And I'm just going to remind you, on page 17 of your white book are all of the care plan sets. Those are the care plan sets that they're going to choose from for the state exam. If you look at all of those care plan sets, you can see that each one has 3 skills. That's exactly what I'm holding in my hand. This is a testing care plan set. You can see there's 3 skills. These are not random. It's important for you to understand. They didn't just, put their hand in a hat and pull them out. There's a very scientific formula they use to group these skills together. There's 1 documentation skill. Everybody gets a documentation skill. So pulse, respirations, feeding a resident, and emptying a drainage bag. You will get one of those 4, guaranteed. Okay. Then you have an ADL skill. What does ADL stand for? Yeah, activities of daily living. That's right. So those are things like good morning, dressing, bathing, grooming, those types of skills, right? So hand and nail care, foot care, partial bed bath, peri care, catheter care, mouth care, hand and nail care, foot care, denture care, all of that group. Then the last category is mobility skills. So this would be range of motion, all of them. Ambulate with a gait belt, which we learned on Wednesday. Transferring from bed to wheelchair, which we're going to learn today. Sideline position, remember turning the patient over in bed and putting some pillows behind their back, between their legs, under their arm, adjusting the one under their head. Mobility skills. Okay, so they take 1 skill out of documentation, 1 skill out of ADLs, 1 skill out of mobility, and that's how they create these care plan sets. But they also have to consider time. They're not going to give you the longest documentation skill and the longest ADL skill and the longest mobility skill. They have to make sure that the time for those 3 skills equals to a predetermined range. Does that make sense? So that's how these skill sets came to be. So time actually enters into this. The skills that you are going to be asked to perform on the care plan the timing needs to fall within a range. Now they're going to tell you when they give you the skill set, they're going to say, okay, here's your skill set. They're going to read it to you. And they're going to tell you, you have 33 minutes to do this skill set, or 39 minutes to do this skill set, or whatever the case may be. Now, the way they get to that is using a formula. So we're going to do this together really quickly. Okay. So, Cynthia, give me a number 1 to 11. Okay. So the computer randomly chose skill set 10 for us. And skill set 10 is measure and record pulse, perform passive range of motion to elbow and wrist, and provide a partial bed bath to the resident. Okay, so those are our 3 skills that we have to perform. Now, if you look at the bottom of each skills page, so let's go to page 35. We're going to come back to 56 in a minute, but go to 35. Do you see at the bottom of page 35 where it's got that little clock and it says time? How many minutes is there? 5 minutes. So each skill has an amount of time that somebody with your level of experience should be able to complete this skill in. Now, this is based on how long it takes people during the test. Okay. So they did a huge study about a year long, and they physically timed how long every person within that year took to do a pulse for the test. Remember, these are people with your level of experience, right? Not me. These are people with your level of experience. And it averaged out to be about 5 minutes is what people with your level of experience needed. That's the published time. Now you can do it quicker, right? But this is the average. Does that make sense? So you have that at the bottom of every skill. Now, if you go back to page 56, I have a whole graph there in the first column that tells you all of the times. So let's figure out our time for this particular skill set. Measure and record pulse. How much time should somebody with your level of experience be able to perform that skill in? 5 minutes. So 5. So write 5 somewhere on that page in the margin. Perform passive range of motion to the resident's elbow and wrist. How many minutes for range of motion? If you look in the column on page 56, the first column, look in the graph on page 56, look in the graph for range of motion.
4 minutes.
4 minutes. So write 4. So we had 5. We're going to add 4 in. Now, partial bed bath. How much time should somebody with your level of experience be able to complete a partial bed bath in? 19 minutes. So we had 5 for pulse, 4 for range of motion, and 19 for partial bed bath. If you add all of that up, what do you get? So 9 and 19 is 28, right? So that seems like quite a bit of time. But wait, they're going to give you more. They're also going to give you an extra 3 minutes for hand washing. So your hand washing does not even count in that skill time. They're going to give you another 3 minutes for that. So we had 28. We're going to add 3 more in, and that gives us 31. Then they're going to give you another 5 minutes for what we call transition time. I call this thinking time. This is when you're trying to, right before you start the skill, you're trying to think about, how you're going to approach it, what supplies you need, all of those things. At the end of the skill, it's the time that you need to review the care plan, make any corrections, right? That doesn't count in the skill time. They give you 5 extra minutes for that. So if we had 5 for pulse, 4 for range of motion, 19 for partial bed bath, 3 for hand washing, and 5 for transition time, that gives us 36 minutes. Good? Does that make sense? So it's really, really hard to time out, guys. Now, for those of you who are still a little concerned about the whole timing thing, we have 36 minutes to do this skill set. And when they give you your care plan set, they're actually going to tell you have 36 minutes to do this skill set. So they tell you how much time you have. And when you get to 31 minutes, so 5 minutes before you time out, they're going to tell you have 5 minutes left. They're going to give you a 5-minute warning. Now, anything that you don't get to, if you time out, anything without a check mark is what's going to count against you. You don't automatically fail for timing out. It's just that if you didn't get to do something, you're not going to get credit for it. So when they give you that 5-minute warning, you need to kind of speed things up a little bit. Try to get as many checkpoints in as possible in that time. Okay, good. Questions? It's not an automatic fail, but the whole process is there's nothing random about it. You need to understand that. The evaluators aren't just sitting there thinking, oh yeah, I really don't like you, so I'm going to give you the hard ones. It doesn't work like that. It is very scientific. So these skills that they're going to assign you are already pre-selected from the categories, and they make up the skill sets. You're going to get one of these 11 pre-selected skill sets. And you have them in your book on page 17. One of these. Yep. You will get one. You don't know which one. And ultimately, it really doesn't matter. Students get really fixated on this, like they come over and take pictures of it. I mean, you have it in your book, but people get really fixated on this. Guys, it really doesn't matter. It has no bearing on anything. Memorizing what skills are together for the test. Guys, the test is 36 minutes out of your life, right? What should you be preparing for? Yeah, the 36 years you're going to be doing the skills. Right? So it doesn't matter what mouth care goes with. You need to know mouth care because Henry and Martha and Mabel and Ivy are all going to need mouth care out there. Not for the test. Does that make sense? Good. I read a very disturbing article last night. In Florida, the rate of adverse events in nursing homes doubled in the past year. There was a gentleman an hour away from us down in Brandon who was left outside in a wheelchair in the heat of summer for hours. When they finally remembered to go get him, his core temperature was 106 degrees. He was horrifically dehydrated. There was a gentleman in a St. Pete nursing home who had to have his leg amputated because a pressure sore went unacknowledged, untreated. Guys, what we do matters. Now, the nurses are certainly need to hold some blame for this, but the errors that are occurring at the CNA level. It wasn't a nurse that took that man out and left him outside. It wasn't a nurse that was giving bed baths and failed to report the pressure sore. This is unbelievable. It's unethical. It's unconscionable. And the rate doubled. Now, if it's me in that nursing home, that has a huge impact, right? These aren't nameless, faceless lumps of flesh that we don't care about. These are people, living, breathing humans that had pasts, that have families, that have hopes and dreams that are still as yet unrealized. And it's not fair for us to take those things away from them because of apathy. So don't get tied up in this. This doesn't matter. This is 36 minutes of your life. If you're spending all of your time focusing on the test, you've missed the point. Why are you taking a test to get into an industry that you have no interest in? Right? And unfortunately, that's what's happening out there. People are learning just enough to get past the test, and then they get out there and they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing with these patients. Why are you taking a test if you don't want the industry that test is getting you into? We need to focus on the industry, not the entrance exam to that industry. Does that make sense? Good. This is a really serious thing, and I think that we need to spend a little more time remembering why we come in, because guys, it's hard out there. It is super hard. You've got families who are difficult to deal with. You've got patients that have attitudes. You've got staff members that aren't going to help you. You've got nurses that are apathetic. You've got way more patients than you can care for. So I know that's going to drag you down. I know that's going to affect you. And I know that that could very, very, very quickly lead to apathy. But my job is to try to remind you that even on the hard days, there's still people. Does that make sense? Good. So we got to do a better job. So yeah, you will have a testing care plan set. It will have 3 skills on it. There is a time associated with that. It's not an automatic fail if you go over the time, but that's not really what you should be looking at and focusing on. Okay. All right. So today we have 3 skills. We have transfer from bed to wheelchair. Do you guys remember ambulate with a gait belt that we learned on Monday? Transfer is pretty much the same thing, but instead of standing somebody up and walking them, we're going to stand them, pivot them, and sit them down in the wheelchair. But all of the same rules apply. We still have to have shoes. We still have to put the gait belt on properly. It still has to be tight enough. And we're going to check it with how many fingers? 4 fingers. We still have to use the right body mechanics. All of those things are all still the same. We still have to make sure they're not dizzy when we stand them up. They still have to feel the chair behind them. This is all familiar to you. There's not much there to learn. We do have to learn about the wheelchair though. That's the new thing I'm going to kind of throw in to this skill, is learning about the wheelchair. But overall, not a hard skill. We're also going to learn how to feed a resident in a chair. Now, the reason that I put this one toward the end of the program is because it doesn't follow our rules. It doesn't follow any of our rules. So we have to spend some time talking about why. Okay. So this is kind of the outlier. Everybody knows how to feed another human, right? Don't overload the spoon. Don't choke them. That make sure they're sitting up, those types of things. You could feed another human, right? We procreate, we develop little humans and then we have to feed them. We know how to do this. That's not really what the skill is about. So I've got to explain a lot of the background of that one. And then we're going to learn pericare, which is the one that everybody hates. Everybody's very uncomfortable with. And we have to learn a little bit about anatomy, why there's an infection risk here, why we need to make sure that we're cleaning appropriately. But the washing rules are all the same. We're going to check the water. We're going to let them check the water. We're not going to add soap to the basin. We're going to use a leaves method because this is a wet body opening, right? So you already know the mechanics of this. We just have to learn a little bit about where we're doing the washing and what special considerations there are. So the skill itself, not much to learn. So now we're kind of focusing on the theory of these skills, the background information that you need to know to be successful. Good. But the washing, you know how to wash. Whatever we wash, we rinse. Whatever we rinse, we dry. So you know the rules involved. Good. Questions? Not too bad. That's on Monday. Yep. find my mouse here. All right. So just to review real quick, how do we know what to do with each patient? Care plan. What does every skill start with? What does every opening start with? A knock. When do you wash your hands? Before you touch patient. Great answer. But during the opening, after you close the curtain. All right. How long do you have to rub for? Minimum of 20. Yeah. Does that include your nails? No. That's just rubbing. Just rubbing. 20 seconds does not include your nails. Nails is after the rubbing. Okay. What do we put our supplies on? A barrier. And do we get our barrier with our supplies? Before. Why is that important? Yeah, you don't want to hold your supplies up next to your uniform while you're trying to spread the barrier. How do we know when to wear gloves? Okay, so non-intact skin, body fluids, ooey gooey, right? And personal skin or anything covered by a bathing suit normally. If you are going to wear gloves, what's the first thing they should touch? The patient. Keep your gloves clean for your patient. Make sure that when your gloves are soiled, you're not touching a lot of other things and cross-contaminating. How do we know when to use a privacy blanket? Okay, anytime the patient is uncovered or undressed. And when you put the privacy blanket on, what do you have to be careful not to do with it? Shake it or snap it. We want to put it on over the sheet and pull the sheet down underneath, and that keeps the patient covered at all times, right? If you don't use all of your supplies, what do you do with them? Yeah, they have to go in dirty linen. That's right. We don't keep them in the room. You don't put them back in a clean supply cabinet. Where should the patient be in the bed at all times? In the middle, right? If they're on their back, they need to be in the middle. If they're on their side, where should you be positioned? Behind. Very good. Very good. So in order to get somebody on their side and that they remain in the middle after the turn, you're going to scoot toward me and then roll away. Good. If we're going to wash something, we're going to get water and we're going to check it. Who else is checking it? The patient. And in this case, the evaluator may even stick their fingers in there too, just to make sure. So make sure that you're using warm water. Where does the soap go? On the wet washcloth, not in the basin. Make sure your washcloths are not drippy wet either. That's important, right? That's uncomfortable. Whatever we wash, we rinse. Whatever rinse, we dry. That's right. And if we're washing a wet body opening, what do we need to use? Gloves. Very good. What washing technique do we need? The leaves. That's right. The 4 leaves of the washcloth. Okay. We want to be careful not to get our surface wet either. So if we're working on the table, put a barrier down. If you're working on the bed, put a towel or a chucks down, something to protect the surface. If we're going to put lotion on, what do we do before we put it on? After we put it on? Yeah, wipe it off. Good. All basins are cleaned exactly the same way. We're just going to rinse, dry, and store. That's all we have to do for the tests. But you want to make sure you have a towel for putting it away, right? Because you don't want to cross-contaminate your environment. If the patient's feet hit the floor, we got to talk out there. Shoes, are slipper socks enough? No, and it amazes me when I go into the hospital, how many patients are walking around in slipper socks. Like, if you go down the road to this, we won't say names, but if you go down the road to this hospital right over here, there's a Subway downstairs. And it amazes me. Every time I go in there, there's at least one patient in line at Subway with slipper socks on. It just, guys, people come in from the outside. You don't want those things crawling into bed with you, right? So patients aren't going to know this. You didn't know it before I explained it to you. So that means your patients are probably going to try to get out of bed and walk. You should be encouraging them to wear shoes. And they have shoes. Very few people go to the hospital without shoes. Very few. Have you ever been to the hospital as a patient? Did you wear shoes? Hey, they're there. You just have to find them. They're probably in the bottom drawer of a bedside cabinet or in the closet or in a patient belonging bag. Could be shoved under the bed, but they're shoes. If they don't have any, let the nurse know. We can call the facility they came from and ask for shoes. We can call the family members. Can you please bring Henry some slippers? We've got some resources there. The nurses just need to know that that's an issue. Now, remember that nurses are only as good as their instructors, right? So it's possible that you may have some nurses out there that haven't put that together either, that haven't realized that, oh my gosh, there's pathogens on the floor. They're walking around on these pathogens and they're getting into bed with those pathogens until you bring it to their attention. So you may have to nicely explain to the nurses why slipper socks are not enough. I learned in my class, there's pathogens on the floor. They're walking through these pathogens and then they're taking them into bed with them on those slipper socks. And watch the nurse's light bulb go off, because as soon as they realize it, they're like, oh my gosh, I never really thought about it that way. Okay. If we're going to stand a patient up and we're going to use a gait belt, how do we know it's tight enough? 4 fingers. When you go to lift a patient, are you going to stand right in front of them? You're going to stand at an angle and you're going to hold the gait belt to lift them, not their pants, not their arms, the gait belt. When you get them standing though, what do you want to know from them? Yeah, I want to know when we're at the chair. I need an exit strategy. And then we're going to let them lead. Where should your focus be when you're walking? On the patient. Make sure there's no obstacles in the way either, right? Always count to 3 before you lift. That way you gain their cooperation. Same thing with transferring. We're going to see that in a few minutes. And before they sit down, what do they need to feel? The chair. Yeah. And then every skill ends the same way, doesn't it? Not. That's the opening. Thank you very much, Miss Jones. Is there anything else I can get for you while I'm here? Remember, curtain, call light, comfortable, clean environment. Those 4. We don't care what order you do them in. And I do them all different ways, but you want to make sure all 4 of those things are covered. When you've taken care of all 4 of those things, then you can go clean your hands. But if you're going to document, you're going to document after you've washed your hands, because remember, you don't want to touch that pen. And if you've documented, what do you have to do? Wash your hands again, because we have to end skill with clean hands. You have no idea what's going to happen out in that hallway. You do not want to take pathogens out into that hallway where a patient may need your assistance or somebody may have brought cookies. You have to have clean hands when you exit that room. You don't know what is waiting for you. Good? So guys, you just recited all of those. You don't need me anymore. Well, let me show you the rest of the skills. All right, so let's go to page 50. How are you guys feeling about the test? Are you feeling less anxious than you did before you started the class? I know it's getting close, isn't it? We've already done the test registration. You're like, oh my gosh, there's only 1 week left, right? The stress is starting to mount a little bit, isn't it? Okay. At this point, the best advice I can give you is to practice. You really do need to practice the skills, and we will have practice time today. All right, so page 50, the care plan at the top of the page says transfer the resident from bed into the wheelchair. The resident is unable to walk or take steps. I want you to underline that. That is the key part of this care plan. The patient is unable to walk or take steps. I cannot overstate this, because if you do not get the wheelchair close enough to the bed and the patient has to unconsciously take a step to get to that wheelchair, it will impact your score, because what does care plan say? They can't. They are unable to. It says they can stand with support. That's good. That's good. A gate belt or transfer belt is required to transfer the resident, and then after, the patient will stay in the room, which is fine. Usually, if we're getting somebody into a wheelchair, it means they're going somewhere, going to a meal, going to activities, going somewhere. But for our purposes for the test, the scene ends here. We're just going to leave them in the room. But if you were taken out of bed and put into a wheelchair and you're going to be left in the room, would you want to be facing a wall? No. So make sure when you take a patient out of bed and put them in a wheelchair, you aren't leaving them facing a wall, right? They need to be facing life. Okay, so kind of keep that in mind. Good? Questions? All right, if you go back a page to 49, we are going to discuss wheelchairs. Let me grab one. Let me grab this one. Just gonna get behind you here real quick. I need to unzoom this. Okay. So wheelchairs are usually kept in the folded position, like this for storage. That just kind of gets them smaller, easier to work with. To open a wheelchair, we're going to lift up on the handles to get the big wheels off the floor, because that's a lot of friction. So you want to lift up just a little bit and then pull the handles apart and the wheelchair will open. They don't all open this easy. Sometimes wheelchairs are a little bit stiffer and they'll only open up about this much. In order to finish opening it, you have to press down on these bars to finish opening it. But don't put your hands there. Like, I don't want to put my fingers down inside, because as this expands, it's going to pinch my fingers. So when I am pushing the seat down, I want to keep my fingers up out of the way and just use this part of my hand to push the seat apart. Good. Okay. All right. Brakes are important. Brakes are unbelievably important. Anytime you walk away from a wheelchair, it should be locked, because floors are rarely level. And if we have an unlevel floor and we have a rolling wheelchair with a patient in it, the weight of the patient will cause momentum to build up, and that means the wheelchair is going to roll faster. And the only thing that's going to stop it is whatever the patient runs into, which is usually another patient. So when you have a patient in a wheelchair, it should be locked. Your patient can unlock it and go anywhere they want to. That is not a restraint. Okay. Brakes can be worked by anybody. That is not a restraint. It is a safety measure. So I need you to understand that you will have a written test question on that. Wheelchairs should always be locked. They should also be locked when you're taking a patient out of it and when you're putting a patient in it, so it doesn't roll away on you. So brakes are important. Brakes are very important. They're so important that if you forget brakes, it will fail you on the state exam. That's how important it is. Okay. Now to engage the brakes are levers that are found right in front of the big wheels. So you see these levers here? You can actually see them right here. This particular wheelchair, they all work a little different. This particular wheelchair, if you pull back on the lever, it engages the brakes. That wheelchair, you have to push forward to engage the brakes. So you need to know how the brakes work on every wheelchair that you're going to work with. Okay, take a moment to kind of look at it and make sure that you figure out how that works. But this one, if you press back on the lever, the brake bites into that wheel and it is now engaged. To disengage the brake, you would just push it forward. That metal bar removes itself from the wheel and now it can freely roll. Good? Questions? You can see that here on the screen. So here's our memory point. Brakes must be engaged anytime the wheelchair is not actively in motion. Keep that in mind. So you can see it here, but I'm actually going to pull the chair over to show you because live, it makes a little bit more impact. And it's actually kind of important. Do you see the height difference between the chair and the wheelchair? There's a really big height difference here. Now, chairs are a little bit lower because we want your feet to be flat on the ground when you're sitting in a chair. Now, of course, mine don't reach the ground, but in general, we want your feet flat on the ground when you're sitting in a chair. But the whole purpose of a wheelchair is to make that patient mobile. We don't want their feet flat on the floor if we're trying to push them somewhere. So wheelchairs are higher than regular chairs. You can actually see that here, right? Well, that's kind of important because it has to do with circulation. When I have, okay, so on planet Earth, we have gravity, right? Gravity, my heart pumps, gravity pulls my blood down to my feet. That's where my blood is going. In order for my blood to get back up to my heart, it's got to work. It's an uphill battle. It's got a long way to go, and there's no heart in my feet pumping it back up. So that's a problem. So you have veins that have little valves inside that when the heart beats, the blood moves up a compartment, the valves close until the next heartbeat, and then the next heartbeat, the wave goes up another compartment. So it kind of like climbs the ladder. Make sense? Well, all of that happens, all of those veins, or most of them, not all, but most veins in your legs run through the back of your knee. The back of your knee. That's where those veins all converge. So if I blood my feet, in order to get back to my heart, it's got to go through the back of my knees. If I'm sitting in a chair, in a wheelchair, and my legs are dangling, they're not on anything, that means this seat is pressing up into the backs of my knees. That's squishing those veins down. And that means the blood is not going to be able to move very effectively back to my heart. I'm now trapping the blood in my legs. That can cause swelling. But if you remember something I said to you when we were talking about diabetes, anytime blood slows down or stops, it clots. You remember me saying that? When we have a patient in a wheelchair and their legs are dangling and not supported, and this seat is pressing up into the backs of the legs, that can actually cause blood to clot because it is slowing down and stopping. Are blood clots ever a good thing? No. So when you have a patient in a wheelchair, it is actually way more important than you realize to get the foot pedals into place, because that's what's going to hold the patient's feet up. That relieves the pressure on the backs of the knees, allows blood to flow, and you will have fewer patient consequences. That's what these foot pedals are all about.
You also, if you don't put your feet in the pedals, you can break your ankle.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. There's a safety concern there because their foot, if it's on the ground when you're trying to pull, will actually go up underneath the wheelchair. Yeah. Yeah, there's a huge safety component. Oh, see? Adverse incidents. We don't want to do that to our patients. All right, so these foot pedals, we have to have them out of the way to get a patient into the wheelchair or out of the wheelchair, right? You can't have these foot pedals in your way. So when you are seating the patient in the wheelchair, your leg rests are going to be out. This wheelchair is in the open position now. I can lock it, transfer somebody into it, but now I've got to get those foot rests in place. So these leg supports just swing forward. You hear that snap? It snaps in place. So they swing forward and snap in place. The foot pedals simply fold down. That's it. So we get the foot pedal, the leg rest snapped in place, the foot pedals down, get the feet on, and we're good. Now, when we go to take the patient out of the wheelchair, we've got to reverse the process. So we're going to fold the foot pedals up, and we have to swing these leg rests out of the way. The problem is it's locked. The foot pedals are locked in place. So at the back of this post, right here is a little catch. If you pull the catch forward, it will swing those leg rests out. Let me show you. So here you can see the foot pedals are down and the leg rests are forward. Here the foot pedals are folded up for storage. And here you've got the foot pedals folded up and the leg rests out. This is the appropriate position for transfers. Patients in, patients out. This is the appropriate position for storage. Foot pedals up, leg rests forward, and we're going to compress the wheelchair for storage. To compress the wheelchair, you're going to lift up on the middle of the seat and the two halves go together. But do you see how floppy those leg rests are? If I'm moving that around, those leg rests can swing out and hit something. So when you're moving storage, when you're storing the wheelchairs, these leg rests need to be in the forward position, locked in place, and the foot pedals up. Okay, does that make sense? Good. Okay. Yeah. Yes. And that's something that the question is it a good idea to make sure the wheelchair is working appropriately before you're using it on the patient? Absolutely. Anything that doesn't appear to be working properly should be removed from service and the appropriate person in the facility notified. Sometimes that's the nurse. Sometimes it's maintenance. Sometimes it's biomedical engineering. But if you have something that you realize isn't working properly, the brakes don't work, the foot pedals can't be removed, whatever the case may be, things break. Absolutely. You just need to make sure that you remove it from service so nobody else can use it. And we've notified the appropriate person. Now, how do you know who the appropriate person is in your facility? Well, when you get hired, doesn't matter where you work, pick a place, does not matter where. When you get hired, you are going to go through orientation. Every place requires orientation. Now, in most places, you're going to have probably a day or two in a classroom for orientation. And they're going to go over things like fire safety, benefits, how to clock in, who to contact for payroll problems, who your supervisor is, what floor you're going to be working on, what the uniform requirement is, right? So it's like, some time of classroom learning. Not overly exciting, but pay attention because it's all information you need. And then you're going to be paired up with a preceptor. You're going to be shadowing somebody in the unit that you're going to work on. And they're going to teach you the way things are done in that facility. So your job during orientation, during shadowing, is twofold. The first is to learn the facility's policies and procedures. The second is to learn the patients you're going to be working with. So don't ignore that part of it. That's actually part of your orientation, especially in long-term care, is to have a chance to kind of get to know the patients. Okay, good. So one of the things with orientation that most people don't ever really think about, and I hear it all the time, well, that's not the way I did it where I came from. In my last job, we did it different. Well, you're not at your last job. Your last job is not paying your paycheck. You need to learn the way we want it done here. And let me explain to you why. Healthcare is not consistent. The performance of healthcare is not consistent throughout all facilities. And let me give you an example. Okay. How many of you guys have ever cleaned your house? Okay. I clean mine too. Not as often as I should. Usually when company's coming, right? But I'm a very busy person. I generally work, and I'm not exaggerating here, I generally work 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. I don't take very many days off. Because all of this, the resources that you see, I'm the one that has to create all of them, everything. So this takes a lot of my time and a lot of my energy, and I don't have a whole lot of time for cleaning. So I hired a cleaning company. And they came in and I asked what they did, and they told me very general terms, we'll clean the kitchen, we'll sweep, we'll mop, we'll clean your sliding glass doors, those types of things. And I thought, hey, that's great. I'm going to hire you, come in and clean my house. They were there for 4 hours. Okay, a team of people for 4 hours cleaned my house. But they didn't clean it the way I wanted it cleaned. They didn't pick up the rugs off the floor to sweep and mop. They went around. They didn't clean the ceiling fans. Well, I realized later that that was an extra charge. Had I known, I would have gone ahead and asked them to do that. They could load the dishwasher, but they can't unload it. They cleaned my sliding glass doors, but only as high up as they could reach. Right? So at the end of this, did it really help? I had to pay quite a bit of money to get somebody to come in and help me with things that I could have done myself, but I really don't have the time or the inclination. But did it really help if it wasn't done the way I wanted it done? No. Okay. So if I were in charge of a facility, I'm going to set things up a little bit different than the facility down the road, because I want a little bit higher level of service. So the way that you did things down the road is not the way you're going to do things here in this facility. I'm the one that's paying the bill. I'm the one that's setting expectations, and I'm going to relay those expectations along to you. Now, it would have been helpful when I hired this cleaning company if we had had a little bit better communication. If I had listed the things I expected from them, and they had listed the things that they were willing to do, services they were willing to provide. If we had known those two things about each other, then we probably would have had a better relationship, right? I've had a cleaning company once. I never called them back after that, and I decided to do it myself from then on. But if we had had better communication, this may have had a totally different outcome, right? Clear expectations. Has anybody ever held a job? Do you know at your job, you have a book called a policy and procedure manual? Anybody ever hear that term? Policy and procedure manual? That is the list of what they want you to do and how they want you to do it for that facility. And it only works for that facility. So during orientation, part of your job is to go through the policy procedure manual to find out what they want you to do and how they want you to do it. Now, I can tell you in 30 plus years of nursing, I can count on one hand the amount of people that I have precepted that actually ask to see the policy procedure manual. One hand. Man, I precepted a lot of people. That policy procedure manual usually is a folder up on a bookshelf somewhere covered in dust because nobody takes it out. Nobody takes a look at it. Nobody knows where it is, what's in it. They just all do the things they're going to do the way they did them somewhere else. Now, remember, everybody's coming from different places. That means you're doing bed baths completely different than she's doing them. And she's doing bed baths completely different than the way you're doing them. And there's no consistency anywhere. And yet there is a book that's supposed to tell all of us how to do it the same. So when you're in orientation, make sure that you take the time to read through the policy and procedure manual for skills you know you're going to be doing on a regular basis. Does that make sense? I know no one ever looks at it until they make a change, and then they make everybody initial the new policy and procedure, and then they put it in the book and nobody looks at it. All right. So good. Everybody understand the wheelchair? Okay. So when you have a wheelchair that does not work properly, that is damaged in some way, that has something wrong with it, and you remove it from service, that policy and procedure manual is going to tell you what you're supposed to do next, who you should report that to, whether it's your nurse, biomedical engineering, maintenance, whatever the case may be. That information will be found in the policy and procedure manual. All right, let's talk about positioning. If you remember, I told you to underline that the patient is unable to take steps. You guys remember that? Well, if that's the case, if the patient is unable to take steps, that means when we stand this patient up, we have to be able to turn them and sit them down in that wheelchair without them having to take a step to get to the wheelchair. And remember, one of our rules is they have to feel the chair behind them. So we've got to stand this patient up, pivot them, and they've got to be able to feel that wheelchair behind them. And then they got to say they can feel the wheelchair behind them. And then we can help them sit. If the wheelchair is too far away, that won't happen. So making sure the wheelchair is properly positioned is one of the most important steps of this skill. When you're positioning a wheelchair for a transfer, you've got to have the brakes engaged before we put the patient in, the footrests out to have a clear area so their feet don't get all tangled, but it's got to be at a slight angle, almost touching the patient. When I say almost, I mean millimeters, not inches, millimeters. So that when you lift that patient up and pivot them, the backs of their knees are right up against that seat. It's right there. And this is the number one mistake that's made with wheelchair is people don't get the wheelchair close enough. Now it has to be at a slight angle. Keep that in mind. It's got to be, if you just have it like parallel to the bed, that's not going to work. It's got to be at a slight angle to make this work. And I'm going to show you how. So good? All right. So this is just like ambulate with a gait belt. Before we sit the patient down, we've got to make sure that they can feel that seat. Now, this is something that gets kind of overlooked quite a bit. It says the patient can't take steps but can stand with support. When you're lifting a patient and pivoting them, you're pretty much holding their weight. I mean, you just are. I don't want to be holding somebody's weight for a long period of time. I want to do this pretty quick. So if I lift a patient up, pivot them around, and I've got to stop and ask, can you feel the seat behind your legs? That's a whole lot of time that I'm holding that patient upright. I don't want to do that. I know I have to ask, but I don't want to do it when I'm holding their weight. So I give them instructions before we transfer. I tell the patient, I'm going to stand you up and pivot you. When you feel that seat behind your legs, say, sit. And then when I get their hands on my shoulders and I get my hands around the gait belt right before we lift, I'm going to remind them again, when you feel the seat, say, sit. Okay, so 2 times. I tell them and then I remind them. And then I lift, pivot, they say sit, and down we go. Man, it's so much quicker, right? It'll save your back. Good. But they have to feel that seat. So we've seen all this before. This is not new to us. There's nothing new here. If the patient's feet hit the floor, we talk about their shoes. Now, this patient is laying in bed. They're not going to have shoes on. So that means for the test, you're going to physically have to put shoes on this patient before you transfer them. Physically. Now, for the test, if you remember on the first day, we talked about the test, and I told you they're going to pair you up with another individual, right? But for this skill, they're going to pair you up with somebody your body size or smaller. They are not going to pair you up with somebody larger than you, your body size or smaller. So when I check everybody in, I'm kind of looking at body sizes, right? And I'm also going to look at shoes because I know that somebody's going to have to put shoes on somebody else. So I'm looking for easy. Because as the evaluator, I want to be at home in my pool drinking my Mai Tai, not watching you struggle to put somebody's shoes on. So the quicker I can get you out, the quicker I can get home. So if you, let's say that you, right, are the person that's going to have that gets this particular skill, I'm going to look around for somebody your body size or smaller. And if I've got a couple to choose from, I'm going to look at shoes. If one of them has slip-on shoes, that's who I'm picking. Good? Makes sense? Okay. Slipper socks are not enough. We already know that. We're going to use 4 fingers between the gait belt and the patient once we get that gait belt on and make sure that it's snug enough. Make sure it is snug enough because when you go to lift a patient, if that gait belt isn't on snug enough, you'll know it because they'll slide right out of it. Feet must be flat on the floor, obviously, right? We're going to count to 3 before lifting. We're going to ask if they're dizzy or weak, and the patient has to feel the chair. We're going to use that same body mechanics, 1 foot in front, 1 foot parallel before we transfer. Now, skill specific. These are things that checkpoints that relate just to this particular skill. You want to make sure the patient's sitting on the side of the bed. Now, we have to do this. I'm going to show you how to pivot somebody so it's actually not as hard as you think. And again, people try to do this wrong. This isn't the honeymoon lift. That's what I call it, the honeymoon lift. You know, when somebody carries you in over the threshold on honeymoons, right? That person's like this. This is not the honeymoon lift. When you're pivoting a patient onto the side of the bed, it's one hand under the shoulders. Yes, that is correct. But this hand, instead of being under the knees, which is what everybody tries to do, this hand needs to be over the knees like this. If you do this, the pivot is a pivot. If you do this, you're having to push with this arm and pull with this one, which torques your back. Not good. So not the honeymoon lift. Hand under the shoulders and over the knees, and then it's a smooth pivot. Now, when you get them sitting on the side of the bed, though, you got to ask if they're dizzy. It's a quick turn. We're going to position the wheelchair with the foot pedals up and leg rests swung out so that it's wide open for our patient. We're going to lock the wheelchair. Yes. We're going to pivot the patient into the wheelchair smoothly And then after we get them in the wheelchair, we kind of want to stop and look at them and make sure they're positioned properly, that their hips are back against the seat, that, you know, they're sitting up straight, that they don't need to be repositioned. Okay. Good. Questions? Okay. So, table is not quite big enough for me here. I gotta remember how to do this. All right, well, can't quite figure that one out. Okay, Leah, I'm going to designate you. If I can have you come over to this bed, I'm going to have you slip your shoes off and just leave them, you know, on the floor near the bed. You can move the table out of the way, it's fine. And then just lay down in the bed for me, please. Okay. And good morning, Wilma and Marie and Brandel from Arlington, Texas, and Yardley. Good morning, all. Okay. So I picked Leah for two very specific reasons. Number one, she's smaller than me. And number two, she had easy slip-on shoes. So this is going to make this a little bit easier to demonstrate. I will simulate hand washing for the sake of time. Okay. Remember, after you perform your first skill, you will be told you can simulate hand washing from that point. So everybody ready? Here we go. Hi, Miss Jones. My name is Patty. I'm your CNA today. How are you? Fantastic. Do you feel like getting out of bed and into the wheelchair? Okay. I'm just going to close your curtain. Let me wash my hands, get my supplies, and I'll be right back. Okay. I have clean hands. Can you guys see everything on the screen? All right. So I'm going to, after washing my hands, I'll get my gait belt. And I have my wheelchair here, but the footrests are in the out position, so I need to adjust that. Go ahead. I'm going to open the wheelchair. I'm going to remove the footrests by swinging them out of the way. So now my wheelchair is open and accessible. And I'm just going to lay the gait belt in the wheelchair. I'm going to need it in a minute, but not yet. I still have to get her pivoted around and sitting on the side of the bed and get her shoes on. If I have this wheelchair too close, her feet are going to hit it. So I want it within reach, but not so close that it's going to interfere with what I'm doing. So within reach. All right, Miss Jones, if I can get you to scoot your whole body closer to me. Come closer to me. And I'm going to pivot you around so you're sitting on the side of the bed. Okay, I'm going to do all the work. I need you to relax. But I do want you to cross your arms over your chest and just relax. Now, this arm's going to go all the way under your shoulders, and I'm going to grip that furthest shoulder. This one's going to go over your knees. I need a very wide base of support here. So my legs need to be at least shoulder width apart. And I'm going to kind of lean against the bed, make sure the bed is locked. I'm going to kind of lean against the bed because I need that torque. Okay. So one hand under the shoulders and one over the knees. On the count of three, we're going to turn. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Good. Are you dizzy at all? It's a pretty quick turn, isn't it? Yeah. Most people aren't expecting it. And you can actually turn somebody a whole lot easier than you think you can, as long as that arm is over their knees. If it's under the knees, you can't. Get you. Thank you. Go ahead and get them situated. There we go. All right. I'm going to put this gait belt around your waist. This is going to help me get you into the wheelchair. Okay. So I'm just going to remember that you don't want to slide it. I'm going to loop it over, make sure it's not twisted. Tag is on the inside. We're going to put it through the first guard by the alligator teeth here. I'm going to pull it so that it's snug. How do I know it's snug enough? 4 fingers, and then I'll lock it in through the second guard. I'm just going to take that out of our way. Now we're ready to do the transfer. So I'm going to bring the wheelchair over and have it at a slight angle, almost touching the patient. Can you guys see how, you can't see how close that is. Hold on. Will you do me a favor? Just hit the 2 on the bottom, please. The bottom row. Hit the 2. Very good. Okay. Can you guys see how close that is? It's close. It is almost touching the patient. And it's at a slight angle. Now I've got to lock it in place. Make sure it stays there. All right, Miss Jones, you're going to put your hands on my shoulders. I'm going to stand you up and pivot you. Before you sit down, I need to make sure that chair is behind you. So when you feel this seat behind your legs, I want you to say sit. Okay, so your feet flat on the floor. Okay, so I'm going to put my foot here, put your hands up here. Remember, when you can feel that chair, you're going to say sit. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Good. There we go. Now I'll remove the gait belt. You don't have to have as much upper body strength to do this as you think you do. Can I get you to raise your arms up a little bit for me? I'm just going to loop that around. I'm going to unlock the wheelchair and spin you. Okay, so lift your feet up. Spin, 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 spin. Try not to hit that person. And we're going to back up here. Oops. Okay, I'm just going to bring the leg rest out. I'm going to lift your foot, put the foot pedal down, and put the shoe on there. Leg rest out, foot pedal down, foot. And I'm going to back you up just a little bit here so that you can reach your call light. Once I have the wheelchair in the right position, we'll go ahead and lock both sides. All right, Miss Jones, your call light is right there. Is there anything else I can get for you while I'm here? Would you like a magazine before I go? Somebody be down to take you to breakfast shortly. Are you comfortable? Okay. Environment's clean. Put my supplies away. Open the curtain. Wash my hands. Think about my skill. Make any corrections. And tell the evaluator my skill is done. Let me get that out of your way so you can get up. Okay, go ahead and lift your feet up. There you go. There you go. Any questions on that one? All right. All right. Any questions on anything we've gone over so far? For the test, they're not going to set you up like that, but I can actually transfer somebody that's bigger than me. You can too, but you have to find your own limitations. And the only way to do that is with practice. I certainly wouldn't put somebody 3 times your body weight and ask you to transfer them by yourselves. Usually, in most settings, we try to kind of maintain like a 1-to-1 or 1-to-1.5 ratio. Like if you can transfer somebody your size or maybe half again as big as you, but I wouldn't put you with somebody that is twice your body weight, because we don't want you. See, a lot of it has to do with there's 2 competing problems here, right? First is if I give you something that you physically cannot perform and you become injured, what does that do to my staffing? Right? That's a real big problem. But if the other part of that is if I assign you to transfer somebody that's way bigger than you can handle and you're not physically capable of doing it, that patient's going to get injured. You're going to drop them. So either way, I've either got a staff injury or a patient injury or both. So it doesn't do me any good to force you to do a skill that you're not physically capable of doing. So this has to do with what we call acuity and staffing ratios. So the nurses are responsible for figuring out what CNAs are going to take care of what patients and what units. And these are all things that they need to take into consideration. Okay. So if you are in a situation that you're like, oh, I don't think I can handle that, I don't think that that's safe, you need to let your nurse know. And in general, I'll tell you, in a clinical setting, we play to our strengths. Okay. If we have a male on the unit, male CNA on the unit, I'm going to be really, really nice to him. I mean, I'm bringing him cookies because I want him to do all of my training. I mean, men just naturally have more upper body strength. So it's, no shade on women. It's just the, genetics, right? So I'm going to ask him to do all of my transfers for me. And in return, I'm going to do all of his pericare for him, right? Because patients are a little bit more comfortable with a female caregiver on personal spaces. So we play to our strengths. Okay. Make sense? It doesn't mean you don't have to learn how. And that doesn't mean you get to avoid practicing this, right? We all have to know how to do all of the skills because we may be in a situation where we don't have a male caregiver, or you may be in a situation where there are no female caregivers available. So we have to know how, but in healthcare, the goal is to work as a team so that the patients are the ones that benefit. Okay. Good. All right, let's go ahead and take our break. Let's see here. Amber, to answer your question, how do you find the class? Rewatch it. Go to YouTube under live, because you'll have uploaded, live, some other categories. Go to live. It'll be the first one listed there. I also have a whole playlist of current class live streams, so you can look there as well on the channels. So just go to youtube.com /4YourCNA, and you can find it under the live tab or in the playlist under current classroom live stream. Go ahead and take a break. Everything okay?
Work, falling. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm already working. I have 3 days off the rest of this month. It looks like she's wanting more.
Wow. They're short staffed.
Everybody's short staffed.
Yeah.
So you guys get out there.
Yeah. I was gonna say, you need to be recruiting from the classroom.
Oh. What? Yeah. I already told them, you don't drive. No, I told them, they have people that don't. As long as you have transportation, you just don't. I don't drive, but I do have transportation. Because I already told them, you don't drive, but you have transportation. And they said they have other people. Oh, Maureen, Maureen is about. Maggie's not there. Yeah.
Social Security reason every time I want to do
we have people that don't drive this many trucks, because I feel we found it, long trips. So that you they do even there, open up the remember, you don't know we can find. Or in get problems. There you go. Oh, that works. Yeah, well, I'm from public, so we're public. Because, yeah, like you said, this is my, all the blue report. That's me so far, and I'm still working on the, yeah. And they're nice people, but I want more money. And I've been doing this thing. Oh, yeah. Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Oh, yeah. They're rebuilding them up. Yeah, which we're gonna look at. Oh, I've got some people. Yeah, the group of people. Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah, they're good. I've heard a lot of good things.
All right, let's turn to page 75 in your white book. All right, so this care plan tells us to feed a resident a snack who is unable to feed him or herself. The resident is sitting in a chair in an inappropriate position for eating. You need to underline that. That is the key to this care plan, in an inappropriate position for eating. Then it tells us to document the intake on a food and fluid intake form. But let me explain to you why this is important. If you look at the bottom of the page, you're going to see that this is done on a live person, another testing student. You guys might find yourself being fed something for the test. Free food, yay. But when you're the patient for this, you're going to get some very, very specific instructions. The first thing they're going to tell you to do is when you're sitting, make sure you slump or slouch. Don't sit up straight. Well, some people do better at this than others. Some people, they just kind of do one of these things and they think that's good enough. So if you're doing this skill, it may not be completely obvious to you that the patient is not sitting up straight, right? Because some people will like do, like little noodle, and that's obvious, but others it's not so obvious. So it's actually in the care plan. They're not sitting up straight. So what do you think a checkpoint is going to be? Yeah, get them to sit up straight. Ask them, can you sit up straight? They have to be upright, but it's in the care plan because it may not be visually obvious. Okay. The other instructions are going to be given for this skill is to only take 4 bites and then refuse. So if you're the patient here, you're only going to take 4 bites. That's it. Now for the test, this is going to be a single serve, either pudding cup or applesauce cup. That's what they use for the test. And if you know anything about feeding somebody, you're not going to overload the spoon. It should only be about half full. So guys, you're only getting 4 half spoonfuls of something. If applesauce isn't your thing, try to choke it down. Don't be difficult. If you're allergic to applesauce, though, let them know. They don't want you breaking out into hives during the test. So, just try to be reasonable with this. Does that make sense? Try to be reasonable. But yeah, it's not a hard skill by any means, but it doesn't follow our normal rules. So if you go back a page for me to 72, this skill is different in several different categories. So the first is the privacy curtain. It is the only skill that we do not close the privacy curtain for. And that's because eating is a social event. We gather in groups to eat. We go out to eat in public with other people. If you close the privacy curtain, it isolates the patient and that affects the appetite. And that's actually pretty important. Like when you go over to a restaurant, let's say you go over to one of these restaurants over here, they don't put you in a closed cubicle and close stuff in around you and block you out from other people seeing you. That would just be awkward. That would be weird. You would start to think, what's wrong with me? You are eating in public, surrounded by other people that you don't know. And part of that is visual stimuli. Okay, good. Makes sense? This skill is a little bit different it's the only skill that you're graded on conversation. Now, we've talked about this a little bit before, that you are required to talk to the patient to tell them what you're doing because they don't know what you're doing. So you are required to kind of talk things out, explain to them what you're doing. This skill, you're not going to do that. You're not going to say, okay, I'm putting food on the spoon, I'm bringing it to your mouth. I mean, that would just be weird, right? You're not going to do that. You do have to talk to the patient, but this time you're graded on conversation, not on, describing the skill. So you have to have a real, it doesn't have to be like factual, but you have to have a conversation. You can say something like, they're playing a movie on the big screen later. Would you like to go? The bingo jackpot is up to $2.10. Or did you see those little kids come in and sing their ABCs? Wasn't that adorable? Oh, that was just so cute. Talk to them. We all have conversations when we eat. No, you're not talking with your mouth full, no. But you're still having conversations. You're chewing while somebody else is talking, and I'll prove it to you. Have you ever gone out to eat? If right now, after class, all of you went over to Chili's and you walked in and there were 30 other people there sitting at various tables eating, if you walked in that restaurant and it was dead silent with 30 people eating, how awkward would that be? We are not silent while we eat. We have to have some sort of socialization. Now, if you don't have anybody, you probably have the TV on or the radio on, or you have a book in front of you, but you have some sort of socialization when you eat. It's normal. So if you are sitting in front of somebody and you are shoveling food in their mouth and you are not talking to them, it is awkward. And your patient's not going to eat. They're just not going to. Make sense? So we don't close privacy curtain. That's change number 1. Doesn't follow our rules. We're graded on conversation. That's change number 2. Doesn't follow our rules. The third thing is that you have to sit. The only skill that you are required to pull up a chair and have a seat. You cannot stand over somebody and put food into their mouth. That makes them dependent, and it will affect their appetite. It makes them feel self-conscious, self-aware. It affects their dignity. It changes the balance of power. You do not want to do that to your patients. You have to pull up a chair and have a seat so you're eye to eye with them. So it's the only skill that requires that you sit. So no privacy curtain, have a conversation. You have to sit. Good. So it doesn't follow our rules. We tend to think of all the life events in your life, right? It starts with baby showers. People gather together, they have a baby shower. We're going to welcome a new baby into the family. This is awesome. And in a baby shower, there's always food, right? So then you're born. And when you're born, family members usually bring over food so the mom doesn't have to cook. She's taking care of you for a day or two. And then you get to your first birthday party and everybody gathers together, and that's awesome. And there's always food, right? And then you have other birthday parties, and then you have graduation and there's food. And then you have weddings and there's food. And eventually you get to the end of your life and there's a funeral and there is food, right? Food is central to every milestone in your life. It's important. It's way beyond nutrition. So if you don't understand that part of food, you kind of missed it. So just feeding somebody who can't feed themselves, just going through the motions, you're not truly feeding all of them. You might be feeding them nutrition, but you're not feeding them care. Does that make sense? Okay. So we have to go at this with the right attitude. Now, I'm going to tell you that this is the hardest skill to be a patient for. I'm talking in real life. I'm not talking about when you guys are practicing and playing around and, with family. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking in real life. If you lose the ability to feed yourself, it affects you profoundly psychologically, like no other skill can. It is easier to accept having peri-care done on you than it is to be fed by another human. And the reason for that is because you become independent at eating before you become independent at anything else in your life. Eating is the very, very first skill you master. You learn how to hold a bottle long before you recognize hunger. You learn how to pick up Cheerios and diced peaches off of a tray, a high chair tray, long before you're even sitting on your own. Eating is the very, very first skill we master. So losing the ability to eat affects you psychologically in a way that no other skill does. It makes you truly dependent. On top of that, you know that if you are not fed, you will die. You will. Somebody else holds the power of life and death in their hands. And that somebody else is a stranger. This is a very hard skill to be a patient for. So we need to understand that going into this. We don't want to be distracted by a TV in the corner or by our cell phone or having a conversation with another coworker. This skill is intimate. If I'm feeding you, it is you and me. There may be a whole bunch of other people in the room, but when I'm feeding you, my world has shrunk to just you and me, and you are going to have my total attention. Does that make sense? And if you're not doing it that way, your patient is not going to eat. They'll take a couple bites, they'll say, I'm done, because they're uncomfortable. So we've got to try to do our best to understand that discomfort and work around it. But one of the that you're going to be graded on here is when the patient says, I'm done. And remember, for the test, you're only going to be told to take 4 bites and then say, done. You're being graded on what you do when they say, I'm done. You have to encourage them to eat at least 2 different ways. I'm going to give you 3, but you have to use at least 2. Are you sure you don't want just one more bite? Be nice. Nice always works better than mean. You sure you don't want just one more bite? The second thing I'm going to do is offer to get something else. We've all had those days. Every one of us has gone to get something to eat, taken a bite, and gone, nope, that's not it. Not what I was looking for. Right? We've all had those days. So what if your patient is having that day? They've had a bite or 2 and they're like, nah. So offer something else. Can I get you something else? Is this just not working? Offer something else. And then I always let patients know that food is available if they get hungry later, because your patient may not know that. They may not know there's a nutrition room right down the hallway that has graham crackers and fruit juice. They may not know that you can go to the kitchen and get a half a sandwich to hold them over till dinner because they didn't eat lunch. They need to know that food is available if they need it later. So use at least 2 of those, but you do need to encourage. Now, when you're feeding somebody, you want to feed slow. The spoon should only be half full. And you want to give them time to chew and swallow and make sure that their mouth is clear before you put another spoonful in. And you should be having a conversation with them. So if you're feeding them very quickly, they have no time to respond. So slow down. You've got lots of time to do this skill. We're only feeding them 4 bites. And if you look at the bottom of the page on page 75, you'll see you've got 9 minutes to feed them 4 bites. Slow down. Good? Questions? A couple other things with this skill. Before you get started, you want to offer them a hand wipe. Yes, you're feeding them. Sure, you are. You're the one holding the spoon. But just because you're feeding them doesn't mean that they're paralyzed or they don't have the ability to reach their hand up. You don't want, if they have something dribbling out of the side of their mouth, they may reach their hand up to wipe it away. You do not want dirty hands near their mouth. It also helps stimulate appetite. Most of us were trained, wash your hands before you eat. So it can help stimulate the appetite and maintain that ritual aspect. So we are going to offer them a hand wipe before we get started. We're also going to offer them a clothing protector. They don't have to use it. We don't call it a bib. Oh, do not call it a bib. But we're going to offer, would you like a clothing protector? Would you like a towel across your chest? Would you like something to help, catch any food that might fall? Your patient may say, yes, that's fine. They may say no. We're going to honor whatever they want, but we are going to offer. You also have to offer a drink before you start feeding and every 2 or 3 bites as you feed. This is why the person is only told to take 4 bites, because somewhere in there you should be offering a drink. If we get to bite 4 and you didn't offer a drink, too late. Okay. Now, the reason for this, and this has to do with feeding too, is that we all have our own idiosyncrasies when it comes to feeding. And we don't really think much about it, but we do. Some people drink before a meal. My aunt was like that. She would drink. You could not get her to eat anything until she had drank an entire glass of water. She would drink an entire glass of water before she ate, and it filled her up, so she ate less. Doesn't work for me. I tried it. You also have other people that don't really drink much before a meal, but they drink during a meal. Like, I don't have a lot of saliva. So when I'm trying to eat, I have to drink frequently to help the food go down. And then you got other people that don't drink before and they don't drink during, they drink after. That's my husband. He does all of his drinking after he eats. So everybody has different preferences when it comes to when they drink. So we're going to offer before and we're going to offer every couple of bites. Offering after is fine too, but those are the 2 that are graded. Before and every 2 or 3 bites. Same thing with food though. We have different food idiosyncrasies. Some people don't like their foods to touch on their plate. Just turns them off. Some people are okay with it, things touching, but they don't like their foods mixed. And some people like their corn and mashed potatoes mixed together. Now, if you are I don't like my food mixed person, and I am a corn and mashed potatoes go together person, and I just come along and start mixing your corn and mashed potatoes together and try to feed you with it, that may affect your appetite because that's not how you eat. Right? Some people eat all of one thing before moving on to the next thing on their plate. And some people kind of go back and forth, a little here, a little there, kind of all over the place, right? Some people like to eat dessert first. Some people like to eat salad last. The way you eat is not the way the patient eats. And that's important for you to understand. Because if you start feeding a patient the way you eat, they may not eat. We need to find out what they want, not what we want. I'm going to tell you a story about this. When I was working in hospice, one of my facilities was a local nursing home and had a rehab center attached. And there was a woman, a patient that I was assigned to. She had had a stroke and she also had cancer. And she was not expected to live very long, right? Because her cancer, unfortunately, was inoperable and wouldn't respond to chemotherapy. And it was recurring and it had spread. So we knew what was happening here, but she was still pretty mentally with it. Now, she had had a stroke and she could not speak. But she was still able to kind of using facial expressions and things like that, kind of get
her point across a little bit, right? And I go in to see her one day. Her name was Mary, and I went in to see her, and everybody was down in the dining room being fed. So I go down to the dining room and I pull up a chair. Hi, Mary, how are you today? And she just kind of, blinked her eyes at me, and that's kind of how she was saying hello. And I looked at the plate in front of her, and it was this big goop of gray glop. That's the only way to describe it. It was just this dark gray stuff. And I asked the CNA, I go, ugh, that does not look appetizing. And Mary, I mean, she actually rolled her eyes and kind of turned her head away, letting me know she didn't think it was very appetizing either. So I asked the CNA, what's for lunch today? She says, oh, I think it's like Salisbury steak, mashed potatoes, and beets or something like that. And I said, okay, but what's that? She said, Salisbury steak, mashed potatoes, and beets. I went, would you eat Salisbury steak, mashed potatoes, and beets all mixed together like that? She's like, ew, no. Okay, well, why did you mix it together to give it to the patient? She says, oh, that's pureed. It doesn't taste like anything. No. Puree does not mean no taste. Bland means no taste. Pureed, full taste, no chew. Big difference. I said, go get her a new tray. She's not going to eat that. And you could see the patient, Mary, was very visibly relieved. So be careful. Don't make assumptions. Don't mix everything together because you think it has no taste. I still, that was 15 years ago, guys, and I still can't. I would not eat beets mixed with anything, especially potatoes. I mean, those two things just do not go together, right? So be careful. Be careful. All right, so everybody good with all those rules and not rules, and we don't follow the rules. All right, so the last part of this care plan tells us to document on a food and fluid intake form. So you can see that there in the middle of page 75. But if you want to see a bigger version of it, go back to page 120 and 121. And you can see the documentation forms used by the state exam. So on page 121, the first one there is the food and fluid intake form. And this is what we're going to be filling out. Now, the care plan actually gives you this information. We are feeding the patient a snack, not a meal. Make sure you check off the right one. And we are going to estimate the percentage of the food eaten. Guys, remember, you're only giving them 4 half spoonfuls. And then the patient is going to refuse. So that's like maybe a quarter of the cup. We only put 0 if they flat out refuse. This is going to be done on a 25% scale. So if they don't eat at all, it's 0. If they eat a few bites, if they eat half, if they eat most, and if they eat all. We're going to use a 25% scale to make that determination. Same thing with fluids, right? You start out with a cup of fluid. If they don't drink it at all, it's none. If they drink a few sips, if they drink half, if they drink most, or if they drink all, right? We're going to scale it accordingly. But in order to calculate percentages, you have to know what the patient starts with. If you have a cup of pudding and the patient eats the cup of pudding, they ate 100% of the cup of pudding, right? But if that cup of pudding is on a tray with a sandwich and some chips and some peaches, and all they ate was a cup of pudding, did they eat 100%? No. So you have to know what the patient starts with to be able to estimate percentages. So remember, these are ways the patient, ways to fail the skill, right? If we don't use, and I didn't talk to you about this, Okay, let me back up here. So this skill is different because we don't use a barrier. Every other skill, we go get chucks, put it on the table. That's our barrier. We don't need that for feeding because the food tray is your barrier. You don't need a chucks, right? So this is a way that this is kind of different from other skills. We're not going to use a barrier, which we do in all the other skills. We're not going to close the privacy curtain, which we do in all other skills. We have to sit when we feed them, which we don't sit for anything else. And we have to have a conversation, which is different than all the other skills. All the other skills, we're describing what we're doing. This skill, we're having a conversation. And you can make something up. Let me tell you something about conversation, though. This is kind of important. When you are working with patients, look around their environment. People will put pictures up for things they're willing to talk about. Like, I don't take my family skeletons and put them on my wall, right? Things that I want to keep hidden, I don't put those on my wall. So if it's a picture on my wall, I'm willing to talk about it. I got a picture up here, which you guys can't see, right? I'm willing to talk about it. I like cruising. This is me when I was younger, right? I have something out there that I'm willing to talk about. So look in your patient's environment. Now, most older women, I love this. Most older women will have a picture on their wall, black and white photo of a woman that just is absolutely drop dead gorgeous. These women put us to shame. Man, they were all drop dead gorgeous. They knew how to do their hair and their makeup and dress. Just amazing in the way they put themselves together. I could learn a thing or two. I don't even wear makeup, right? And the pictures are usually them standing with a man in uniform. Now I'll look at that picture and I'll point to it and go, oh my gosh, are those movie stars? Did you know them? She's gorgeous. Oh my gosh, who is that? And watch her sit up straighter and go, oh, that's me. Now, it didn't cost me a thing to make her feel better. It actually acknowledged her as a human with a history. It caused her to be prideful. And it ultimately is going to lead to a better appetite. And all I had to do was look around and compliment something in her environment. But that picture gives me a lot of opportunity for conversation. Oh, really? That's you and your oh, I see it now in the eyes. Oh, it's gorgeous. Where was that taken? How long did you know him? You married him. Oh, what was that like? Where did you get married? Where did you live? How many children did you have? It gives me that one picture, gives me days of conversation opportunity. And it gets me the ability to know her as a human, not a patient. People will display things they're willing to talk about. Now, one time when I was doing home care, I walked into a patient's home and saw a big billboard over her couch. I mean, a wooden billboard over her couch for sunscreen. There's a story there. Let's talk about it. I met a man that was knighted by the Queen of England. I met an engineer from the NASA Apollo mission. And that's an interesting story because he was actually in a memory care unit and he kept taking the wheelchairs apart. He would take the knives from the dining room and he would take the wheelchairs apart. Usually right in front of the elevator. So you go to get off the elevator and you trip over wheelchair parts, right? There's a story. Why is he doing that? There's a story there. When his nephew came and visited, I was like, what does he do for a living? What did he do? Oh, he was an engineer. He worked for NASA on the Apollo mission. He was one of the lead engineers. I'm like, oh, that's amazing. Amazing. But he's a tinkerer. He's an engineer. So he needs to tinker. Let's get him a set of connects so he can tinker. And then he quit taking the wheelchairs apart. Thank God. right? These are people. So look in their environment, try to find something that they're willing to talk about. Sometimes it's hard to read them though. Sometimes it's hard to come up with a conversation. So I usually have some conversation starters in my back pocket. So years ago, I was up in Citrus County where I used to live, and I was doing home care, and I had to go into an assisted living facility and do wound care on a patient's legs. She had horrible leg ulcers because she didn't have good circulation. And this is a very extensive wound care. I mean, I'm going to be there 45 minutes. It's extensive, nothing simple here. So she's in her late 90s, but still sharp as a tack with it. So I pull up a little chair and I'm going to start doing her wound care. So I always have some conversation starters. And I asked her, what's the most exciting place you've ever been? And she says, oh, honey, I've never been anywhere. And now this is Citrus County, right? I'm like, oh, well, you had to have gone somewhere. I mean, we're in Citrus County. You were not here your whole life. She says, yeah, I was. Actually, she says, that's not true. I was born in Brooksville, but I don't remember that. I said, well, have you ever been to like Ocala? She says, no, I've never left the county. Not a day, not a single day in 90 something years. She has always been in Citrus County. Oh my gosh, I settled in because this is now a conversation. She doesn't think she has anything to contribute. I think this is going to be one of the most fascinating conversations I've ever had, because here's somebody living history in front of me that has been here for almost 100 years. She remembers when the roads were paved. She remembers the first McDonald's. She remembers the first car in the county. Amazing. I asked to go back to her because amazing. So take the time to know your patients, and feeding is the one time that you're not rushed. It's the one time you do have time to talk to them, to get to know them. Good. It's amazing what you'll find out. Okay, so we're going to offer a hand wipe before feeding. We're going to offer that clothing protector. We're going to offer a drink before feeding, and every 2 to 3 bites, we're going to let them lead. So we're going to let them set the pace. We're going to feed slow. Spoon should only be half full. And we're not going to use any childlike feeding techniques. No planes, trains, or automobiles, people. No race cars, choo-choo trains, or airplanes. As you go through your career, you will find people that you can connect with humor. I use a lot of humor in my nursing. I think it helps connect and bridge, but I can't use it with everybody. Like my grandmother, I would never use a race car with my girl. She was way too prim and proper. Oh no, she would consider that very demeaning, and that would insult her. I would never use race cars with my grandmother. Right? But there are people that I would, because we've connected and I can use some humor. I know that they're receptive to it. Okay. But for the test, we're not using planes, trains, or automobiles. All right. We're going to talk about feeding percentages now. So when we're estimated percentages, we want to look at what the patient started with. So when you're passing out trays, take a look at the tray so you know what we're starting with here. And then you would estimate the percentage eaten based on what you started with. So here, if you compare the two, right, this is what we started with. The patient just kind of picked at it a little bit. So about a quarter. Here, they've eaten about half of what was offered. Here, they've eaten most of it, but they didn't quite finish it. And then here, there's not much left. Okay. So this would be 25, 50, 75, and 100. You have an activity there on page 74. That allows you to estimate percentages. So if you look at the top of the second column, you'll see a steak dinner. Yum. you look at that steak dinner and then you look at number 5, how much of the steak dinner do you think the patient ate? That's 75%. What about number 6? About 50%. Now, number 7 is a little tricky because I didn't go over that with you. What do you think number 7 is? 0. That is right. It looks exactly the way it looked when we passed that tray out. So this patient did not eat. And what about number 8? 100%. Which one of these, or which ones of these, do you think you should be reporting to the nurse? Yeah, absolutely. If the patient is not eating, why would the nurse need to know that? Is not eating normal? No, it's abnormal. So maybe the patient is nauseous. Maybe they're depressed. Maybe they've got some internal conflict. We don't know why they're not eating, but it is up to us to notice that and to let the nurse know. Failure to eat is always reported. Always. You do not wait to see if it's a trend. And this happens a lot with CNAs. They'll pick up a tray, patient hasn't eaten, they'll just document 0. The next day, they document 0. The next day, they document 0. And then they just wait for somebody to pick up on it. Now this patient hasn't eaten in 3 days. And that's a serious concern. Don't do that. If the patient doesn't eat, alert someone. This just happened recently. Patient went 26 days in a facility without eating. Nobody reported it. The only way that it was noticed is the patient lost, it was either 12 or 15 pounds. Someone went back to look at the meal percentages and noticed that they had refused meals for 26 days. That's horrible. We can do better than that. Now, fluid for the test, we're going to estimate percentages just like we did for food, but in a clinical setting, we handle this a little different. When it comes to fluid in a clinical setting, we actually have to do math, real math. And some of this is going to take conversion on our part. So in healthcare, we always document in cc's or mLs. It's the same thing, just 2 names for the same thing. Cc's or mLs, same thing. Not in ounces. We do not use ounces in medical. Cc's or mLs. So what we need to know is 1 ounce is equivalent to 30 cc's. So if you have an 8-ounce cup of water, we're not going to write 8 ounces. We have to convert that 8-ounce cup into cc's. So we would multiply 8 times 30 and get 240. That 6-ounce coffee cup is not 6 ounces, it's 180 cc's. So when you have a patient that's on intake and output, that means that we are measuring all the fluid that goes in and recording it, and we're measuring all the fluid that comes out and recording it and hoping it's pretty close. Ideally, it should be pretty close. The body's going to use some, but most of what goes in should come out. If it doesn't, well, we got to figure out where it's going. It's going somewhere, right? So intake and output is the measurement of fluid coming in, the measurement of fluid going out, and we always use cc's or mLs to make that calculation. So if you look at the bottom of page 74, the second column, we have 6 ounces of juice there. How many cc's would 6 ounces of juice be? 180. 8 ounces of milk. Yeah, the carton actually tells you. So that's a lesson. Cartons on pre-packaged items will tell you how many cc's there are. And 12 ounces, that's a huge coffee cup, guys. 12 ounces of coffee. How many ounces of coffee is that? Or I mean, so how many cc's of coffee? Okay, so at the end of the shift, we would have to add up everything the patient took in. So 180 plus 240 plus 360. And if you added that up, anybody do that math for me? 180, 240, 360. Should be 780. Because 360 and 240 is 600. Add in 180, so it's 780. You will have a math question on the state exam. You will either be asked to convert. Okay. You have 8 ounces of fluid, how many cc's? Or you're going to be given a list of cc's and asked to calculate the intake for the shift. You will have a math question on the state exam. Okay. Remember, it's multiple choice. Yay. Questions? All right, let's talk about NPO. So this is on page 62. We looked at this earlier in the program, the medical abbreviations. And I told you there were a couple that were going to be very important for you to know. NPO is one of those. So you might want to highlight that or put a star next to it. You do need to know that NPO means nothing by mouth. Now, if you're trying to make sense of this, how in the world does NPO mean nothing by mouth? You need to understand it's not abbreviated English. It is abbreviated Latin. Latin is the medicine of language. Now, to further complicate things, we do have some English abbreviations in here like BRP or ADL. Those are abbreviated English words, but a lot of them are going to be Latin in origin. Like QD is every day because Q stands for quaque, which is Latin for every. QHS is at bedtime. Again, Latin. Quaque ora somni, which is every hour of sleep, or how they would say bedtime. So when you understand that this is, for the most part, abbreviated Latin, you stop trying to make sense of it in English. Let me tell you a story about NPO. So I have the scrub shop next door, and we have customers that we've had. I mean, I've owned it for like 16, 17 years now. So we've had customers that we've had forever. And I used to work over there a lot more because I'm the owner and couldn't afford employees. So I got to know a lot of our customers. And there was one that came in and she knew that I taught classes. And her name is Kathy, and she worked down at Tampa General in the cath lab, cardiac cath lab, where they do, looking at, put a catheter in and look at the heart, the vessels of the heart. And she says, I have got a story for you. I said, okay. She said, now they have a lot of students at Tampa General, a lot of student nurses from different nursing schools. She said, I went up like 5 o'clock in the morning to go get my very first patient for the very first case. And the patient is sitting up in bed eating. And the patient's supposed to be NPO for cardiac cath. So I go and find the nurse and I say, why is the patient eating? And the nurse says, I don't know. She's got a student. Let's go find the student and find out. So they go find the student. And this is the conversation. So I'm going to play both parts. Just try to keep up, right? Cardiac cath nurse says, why is the patient eating? Student says, because they're NPO. Nurse says, I know they're NPO. Why are they eating? Student says, I went and got the tray special. Nurse says, what do you think NPO means? Student, bananas, pineapples, and oranges. True story. This is a nursing student. So what got me is it wasn't even bananas, nanas. That's not even a word, right? But this is somebody who had no idea what NPO stood for and made something up. Made it up. Bananas, pineapples, and oranges. Fruit tray. She went and got a fruit tray. So now Kathy, the cardiac cath nurse, is like, I have to go tell the doctor who is sitting there waiting on his first case that we can't do that case. That doctor is now missing out on money and going to take it out on me. This has real world consequences. But let's think about the patient for a second. This is somebody who has a cardiac issue, needs a cardiac cath to find out what's going on, that could suffer a catastrophic heart attack and drop them dead in a matter of seconds. This is serious. And now we can't do that cardiac cath until the patient is NPO for at least 6 hours. That pushes them back to the end of the day. That's 6 hours of very, very risky time.
Not only that, the patient's awake and now seeing other people eat, they're gonna want to eat.
That's right. Yep. Yep. So this has really big, real world implications. If you don't know what a medical abbreviation is, don't make it up. Ask. If you don't want to ask, at the very least, Google it. I mean, that would have been step one. But this nursing student should have gone to their instructor and said, hey, there's something in here. I don't know what this means. They should have gone to the precepting nurse and said, hey, I don't know what this means. No matter how stupid it made them feel, they should have verified. Does that make sense? Oh, man, that's just, it's a funny story. And I'll never forget it because nanas, it's not even a word, nanas. I'll never forget it. But we need to understand that what we do has real world implications beyond ourselves. So NPO means nothing by mouth. When a patient is NPO, now this is something that you probably do want to verify with the nurse. If you've got an NPO patient, there's NPO and then there's NPO except water. Because it doesn't take long for people to get dehydrated, especially in institutional environments. When you have air that's pumped in, we actually pull the moisture out of that air. So it's super easy to get dehydrated in an internal environment. Super easy. So if you've got a patient that's NPO for days, they can't be NPO without water for days. They'll get dehydrated. So there's NPO and then there's NPO except water. So if you've got somebody that's NPO for a procedure, yeah, they're probably seriously nothing by mouth. But if they're NPO for days, we need to clarify. Water, ice chips, something. Maybe we're giving them fluids by IV, which would take care of the whole dehydration problem, but you need to verify with the nurse. Okay. So these are our checkpoints for feeding. This is what they're actually grading us on. They have to be sitting up fully. We have to offer a hand wipe and clothing protector. We're going to sit down while we're feeding them. We're going to offer a drink before feeding and every 2 or 3 bites. We're going to use small bites. The spoon should be half full. We're going to have a conversation and encourage the patient to eat once they stop. We're going to leave the area around the mouth clean, and we're going to make sure we document at the end. These are our skills-specific checkpoints, and I've already gone over all of them with you. So if you look at the bottom of page 75, you'll see somebody with your level of experience should be able to complete this skill in 9 minutes or less. I'm going to show you the video for this because I do not have food to feed anyone. I know. But let's see how long it takes me to do this skill. Is it? Oh, there it is, feeding. 3 minutes and 44 seconds. And that includes this and the end credits.
So you got 9 minutes, I do it in about 2.
Hello?
Hi, Mr. Jones. My name is Patti. I'm with CNA today. Would you like a snack?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'm gonna go wash my hands, get my supplies, and I'll be right back. Can I ask you to sit up straight for me, please?
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Jones, I'll get you a clean wipe so that you can wipe your hands. Let's take that. Thank you very much. You deserve it. Okay, can I offer you a clothing protector?
Yes.
Place this on your chest. Okay, it looks like we have pudding. How does that sound?
Great.
Very good. Can I offer you a drink before we get started?
Thank
You're welcome. Okay, are you ready?
Yes.
There you go. Do you have any plans for this afternoon?
No.
They're showing a movie on the big screen in the activity room. Would you like me to get more information on that for you?
Yes, please.
Okay. How does the pudding taste?
Delicious.
Very good. Ready for another?
Yes.
Can I offer you a drink? Would you like something to drink?
Yes.
Ready for another bite?
Yes.
Ready for another bite? Are you sure you don't want just one more bite?
Okay, thank you.
Can I get you something else in the kitchen?
No, thank you.
Okay. Let me know if you get hungry later, and we'll get something to eat. We do have food available on you.
Thank you.
Let me take the napkin. Okay. I'll remove this clothing protector from you, and we're gonna put this in your drink. When you go take care of your tray, I'll be right back.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna place the tray back on your table. Is there anything else I can get for you? A magazine perhaps?
No, thank you.
Your call light is within reach. Please let me know if you should need anything. I'm going to go wash my hands and document.
Okay, thank you.
After washing my hands, I'm going to document the amount of food that this patient ate and the amount of fluid. Using my documentation form, I'll review the steps of my skill, make any corrections, and tell the evaluator my skill is done. If I got to pick my skills, that's one I'd probably pick. It's quick, it's a documentation skill, it's something we're all familiar with, it's not foreign. You know, if I got to pick my skills, that would be one I'd pick. But you don't, so. All right.
Any questions? No? All right, let's move on to page 110, please. Last skill. Man, it gets cold in here. Oh, okay. All right. Good. Thank you. Good call. Okay. So this skill is uncomfortable for you. It's uncomfortable for the patient too, but not as much as it is for you when you first start out. Remember this poster that we learned? CNAs do normal, right? Routine tasks on stable patients. You guys remember that? Okay. New incontinence is not normal. If the patient suddenly becomes incontinent, that is not normal. So who would be the very first person doing incontinent care on a patient? The nurse. So the nurse is going to explain everything to the patient. So they're familiar with this. We tend to get all kind of tied up about it. Oh my gosh, I got to do peri-care and they're going to be uncomfortable and I'm uncomfortable and this is awful. The patient knows how to do that. The patient's had this done. This is not new for them. And in fact, when you're incontinent, you have to have peri-care done every 2 hours around the clock. We're going to get to that in a minute. So trust me, they know what's going on here. Not new. Good. But for you, this is new and it's uncomfortable. So we have to get past that. The only way to get past that is experience in reality. Okay. The only way to get past it is experience. But let's look at the care plan here. It says the female patient has been incontinent of urine and needs perineal care. The pad under the resident is wet, but the hospital gown and bedding is dry. That's a miracle. It does not happen like that. If you're going to do peri-care, trust me, you're changing the gown too and the sheets. It's going to be an all-in-one. But we're going to take the miracle they give us for the test because that's all they want us to demonstrate is the actual cleaning of the patient. This is a mannequin skill. So if you look at the bottom of the page, you'll see that it's going to be done on a mannequin. But it also tells us the female patient. So for the test, we are only being graded on peri-care of the female patient, not the male. If you're interested in knowing more about male peri-care, the procedure is there on page 111, very similar to female peri-care. The biggest difference is the risk for infection. Female urethras, or the tube that goes from the bladder to the outside world, on women is only about as long as your pinky. That's not very far for bacteria to travel. I mean, it's like a day trip. Super easy. For males, because their urethra is longer, there's less risk of infection, right? Way further for the bacteria to go to get to the bladder. So the risk of infection is not as great, which is why for female peri-care, the way we wipe counts.
We had a male dementia person who cannot tell you what's wrong, but you can tell by the way they were acting something's wrong. Nobody could find what was wrong, and then finally I was doing the care and he was not circumcised. When you pulled that back, the whole part was covered in white. So he had to go out to get that treated, but
right.
You have to, I mean, that's uncomfortable for us, but like I said, he couldn't tell us what was wrong. We knew there was something wrong.
Right. Yes. The foreskin has to be retracted, cleaned under, and then we always put everything back where we find it. So put the foreskin back. It's important. And yeah, the procedure is there on page 111 for male peri-care. So you want to read that. You need to have knowledge of it. But for this skill, we're going to focus on the female. It's very, very similar, but we're going to focus on the female because the risk of infection is a little bit higher. Okay. So let's discuss or review anatomy and physiology. Again, 5th grade, you learned all this in 5th grade. So we're going to dust that off a little bit. So we have kidneys. Those kidneys filter blood, remove waste products, and create urine. Kidneys work 24 hours a day. They never, ever get a break. No coffee breaks, no vacations. They are working all the time. And when they filter blood and remove waste products and fluid, it creates urine. Well, it does this over a 24-hour period, so little bits at a time. Those drips go down tubes called ureters into the bladder. Your bladder is nothing more than a Ziploc bag. It's just holding the urine. Because if the bladder wasn't there, if it didn't hold the urine, those drips would just come right out. And that would not be, yeah, that you're not going to get anything done, right? So that's the whole purpose of the bladder. It's just there to kind of hold the urine until it's convenient. We can get rid of it all at one time. It's a system that works. Now, at the bottom of the bladder is a little valve, and that valve holds the bladder closed at the base until you go to the bathroom. And then the valve opens and the urine is able to drain out. When you're done going to the bathroom, that valve closes back up and now you're good to go. Your bladder's going to hold urine until your next bathroom trip. Good? Everybody familiar with this? Okay. So this is a normally functioning urinary system. When we have incontinence, what has changed here is the valve. Everything else is the same. Kidneys still filter blood, produce urine 24 hours a day. Drip, drip, drip. Those drips still fall down tubes. Drip, drip, drip. Those drips go into the bladder. Drip, drip, drip. The problem is that valve at the bottom of the bladder just isn't working. So the drips just come right out. Drip, drip, drip. Now, this means that your incontinent patient is going to be wet all the time, nonstop. Drip, drip, drip. And when you change the patient's position, more drips could show up, right? The patient could have a little bit more urine come out because it's positional. But what's broken here is the valve. Now, the good news is that valve is a muscle. That's good news. The valve is a muscle. Because if I have a muscle that's kind of flabby, out of shape, not working real well, I can do some exercises to get that muscle back in shape. And we can help incontinent patients regain continence by putting them on a bowel and bladder retraining program. That means that we're getting the patient up every 2 hours around the clock and taking them to the bathroom. And by doing this every 2 hours around the clock, waking them up at 2 a.m., getting them to the bathroom, 4 a.m., getting them to the bathroom, 6 a.m., getting them to the bathroom. Over a couple of days, the valve starts to remember what it was supposed to be doing. And that exercise of that valve can actually strengthen it and help our patients become more continent. So you will see patients on bowel and bladder retraining programs, and your responsibility for that is to make sure the patient is getting to the bathroom. Don't skip. Because if we skip, now the valve thinks, oh, okay, we're not doing that anymore. And we lose whatever ground we gained. So this is really important. Now, the reason that it's really important is because adult urine is not like baby urine. We don't even call baby urine. We call it something cute like tinkle or pee-pee or something like that, right? We don't even call it urine because it's baby. Baby urine's very mild. Our urine is composed of byproducts from what we eat. Now, adults, we eat a lot of acid. Almost everything that we eat has acid in it. Now, I'm not talking battery acid, but acid. The acid gets removed from the blood by the kidneys and excreted. So adult urine, very acidic. Adult urine, very mild, because they're on formula and baby food, which is nothing, right? Very mild, very bland. So when you have adults that are incontinent, that acid is right up next to the skin. And over time, it's going to burn the skin and eat into it and cause wounds and sores and infections and all kinds of really bad things. So if you have an incontinent patient, that means that we have to clean them and change them every 2 hours around the clock. You don't want to leave them with that urine pressed right up against their skin. Well, if we're already cleaning them every 2 hours, we're already waking them up to clean them, get them up and get them to the bathroom at the same time. And that way we can reduce incontinence, improve the integrity of the skin, and promote dignity with our patients. If you have a patient who is dry, dry, really, really wet, you do not have an incontinent patient. You have incompetent staff members that aren't getting that patient to the bathroom. Big difference. Dry, dry, dry means that valve is holding. Now, the problem is that a lot of caregivers will tell patients, just go and I'll clean you up, because it's easier to clean you up than it is to get you up out of bed and to the bathroom. Do not do that. Do not sacrifice a patient's dignity for your convenience. That should be criminal. And in fact, it is. JACO, or Joint Commission, which is the agency that oversees all healthcare organizations, has identified this as a problem. And if you have a patient that comes into the facility and they're continent, and while they're staying at the facility, they become incontinent, and there's not a medical reason for that to have happened, that facility gets fined $10,000 per episode. That's how serious this is. Because they know that without some sort of prodding, CNAs will let patients just lay in that bed. And that's not good. Not for the patients. Oh, it's absolutely neglect. Absolutely neglect. Yeah. So do you guys understand what incontinence is? How often do they have to be cleaned? Every 2 hours around the clock. Don't skip. We're waking them up 2 a.m., 4 a.m., 6 a.m. Now, a lot of CNAs will feel bad, right? They're looking at the patient. Oh my gosh, I got to wake you up. I'm so sorry. I feel so horrible. I'm just going to let her sleep all through the night. You know, she needs some sleep. Well, when she wakes up, she may not have any skin on that little tush of hers because that acid has eaten it all away, and she's not going to sleep for the next 6 months while we try to heal it. Do not do your patient any favors. Do not let them sleep through the night thinking you're helping them. You're not. You're not. Okay? All right, let's talk about adult briefs. We did not call them diapers. Diapers are for babies, just like we don't use the term bibs, right? That's for babies. These are called adult briefs, or sometimes you'll hear them called depends. Some patients will actually call them pull-ups, but we don't call them diapers. It's a dignity issue. But we have to understand that these have limitations. If the patient is up and around and in activities and meals and stuff like that, certainly appropriate, because nobody wants to wet themselves. That's, embarrassing. So certainly appropriate for social situations. But if a patient is in bed, this is not a good solution. Not at all. Because adult briefs, they're plastic lined. It's the whole point. They're waterproof, right? They're not allowing the urine to go everywhere. That's going to hold in body heat. That's going to hold the urine right up next to the skin. So we have warm, dark, moist. What grows there? All the bad stuff. So yeast infections, urinary tract infections, skin infections. I mean, the list goes on. This is not a good solution when your patient is in bed. Much better to have the patient open to air. If we have them on an underpad or a chucks, that allows the urine to spread out away from the skin. So it's less caustic to the skin. Light and air can circulate, and it reduces the infection risk. So out of bed, adult brief, absolutely appropriate. In bed, however, open to air is preferred. Now, not every patient's going to feel comfortable being open to air, and that's okay. Is that your problem to deal with? Who would deal with that problem? So if you have a patient who's uncomfortable, you would report it to the nurse, and the nurse would then come up with a solution. Good? Okay. So we learned about the leaves method on Monday when we were talking about partial bed bath, right? It's a way of holding the washcloth in your hand. Just a regular square washcloth, folded in half and in half again. and you want to hold it so it's a diamond shape with the free ends at the top, like this. Tuck the side corners in, and now you have a cleaning surface. We're going to use this with peri-care as well. We need to use all 5 leaves. And this is the way we're going to do it. When we're holding our washcloth, we're going to go right down the center crease, and then we're going to fold that over. We're going to take the second leaf and go down one side and fold that over. Take the third leaf and go down the other side, fold that over. And then this area between the leg and the groin, we're going to clean down, fold that over, and then clean down. So we're going to go from the inside out, but it's a one-way trip, top to bottom, and then move away and fold over. If you go down and then back up, you are introducing bacteria to the urethra. And remember, it's only that long. Bacteria are found in the rectal area. We do not want bacteria that we pick up on the washcloth to go back up toward the urethra. The way we wipe here counts. Yeah, always front to back. But the biggest mistake people make is they go front to back and then they go back up. Okay, one-way trip. All right, so our you already know this. You already know how to do this skill, right? We know our care plan. It tells us what to do. It says that the bedding is dry, the gown is dry. We're just going to change the pad out from under the patient because the pad and the patient need to be cleaned. We already know how to do the opening. We already know to use a barrier. We know to wear gloves. We know linen rules. We know privacy blanket. We know scoot and roll. We know washing rules. We can clean the basin, and we know our closing. There is nothing new here. Not a single thing that's new as far as the skill is concerned. Knowing the theory around it, that's a little bit new. But the skill itself, nothing new. So we're going to change that chucks out. Now, let me talk to you about that chucks for a second. Remember, I said our patients open to air, right? Now, if you remember, we learned that room temperature always wins. You guys remember that? Room temperature always wins. Urine is made up inside our furnace area of our body. Remember, our body temperature is about 98.6. Well, urine is actually a little bit hotter than that because it's made up in our furnace area. So urine, when it comes out, is about 101 degrees, roughly. So when you have 101 degree urine hitting this pad, spreading out, it's encountering room temperature, which means room temperature always wins. It's going to cool down. What do you think that pad's going to feel like to the patient? Cold, wet, and probably a little slimy. If you were laying on that pad, what's the first thing you'd want done? Yeah, change the pad. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to change the pad first. That's our first step. Get the patient on a dry pad. But we've got a wet butt on a clean pad. Probably not the best idea. So we're going to clean the front of the patient. We're going to turn them over and clean the back of the patient. And then we're going to change the pad again. So we have a clean patient on a clean pad when we leave them. Okay, good. Questions? We're going to use the leaves method. We're going to change the leaf for each stroke. Remember, middle, side, side, skin fold, skin fold. Whatever we wash, we rinse the same way. Middle, side, side, skin fold, skin fold. Whatever we rinse, we dry. And drying, you're just going to pat from top to bottom. We're not going to go back up. Remember, it's one way. Then we're going to turn the patient over and we're going to clean the back side. We're going to go up the center crease, clean one cheek, clean the other cheek, and once more up the center crease because it kind of acts like a riverbed, right? So we're going to clean that twice. So center crease, one cheek, the other cheek, center crease, and we'll rinse the same way and then we'll dry. Change the pad out again. Remember when changing the pad, clean rolls toward me, dirty rolls away. Like I said, nothing here to learn. We're never going to move back up with each cleaning stroke. We're going to turn the patient on the side and clean the back side, change that chucks again. So not a hard skill by any means. Let's go back up here. Let me show you the video for this one. And then I will pass out your review sheets and you will have an opportunity to practice today. Does anybody have any questions before I show you Perry Care? Any questions? Remember, this is a mannequin skill. Yay. The evaluator will play the voice of the mannequin, and the evaluator will hold the mannequin in place while you clean. Hi, Miss Jones. My name is Patti. I'm your CNA today. How are you? Wonderful. I need to do Perry Care. Is that okay? Okay, let me close your curtain, wash my hands, get my supplies, and I'll be right back. Okay, I'm going to start out with a barrier. This gives me a clean place to place my cleaning supplies. So I'll place the barrier on the overbed table. And now I'll start gathering my supplies. I'm going to need 2 cups, 4 washcloths, a privacy blanket, a towel. I'll place these items on the overbed table. I'll need a basin and soap. And I'm going to need a set of gloves. Okay, Miss Jones, let me go fill the basin. I'll use a paper towel to turn the water on. I'll make sure it's warm, not hot, not cold, just warm. Miss Jones, would you like to check the water temperature and make sure it's okay? It's good? Good. I'll place my washcloth in the water. Okay, Miss Jones, I'm going to place this privacy blanket over you. This is going to help keep you warm and protect your privacy while we do this skill. I'm going to spread the blanket out, being careful not to shake it or snap it. And then I'm going to pull your sheet down to about your knees. Now I'll get my chucks ready for use. I'm going to unfold the chucks, fold it up lengthwise, and roll it forward pink. And I'll repeat that with the second one. Clean rolls toward me, dirty rolls away. Now I'll get my gloves on. Okay, Miss Jones, in just a moment, I'm going to ask you to scoot toward me. And we're going to roll you onto your left side so I can change the chucks that's under you. I'll place one of the chucks on the bed. Miss Jones, can you scoot toward me, please? Thank you. And roll up on your left side. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to roll the dirty chucks toward the patient. Tuck it under her hip. Unroll the clean one. And tuck it under the sword. Miss Jones, can you roll back on your back, please? Thank you. And scoot to the middle of the bed. Okay, I'll come around to the other side of the bed now. Miss Jones, can you scoot toward me, please? And roll up on your right side. 1, 2, 3. We'll remove
remove the soil chucks from the bed and unroll the clean one. This is going to be thrown away. Okay, Ms. Jones, we're going to start cleaning now. I'm going to roll your blanket up to about your waist. This is going to expose you. Please let me know if you're uncomfortable in any way. So I'll roll the blanket up. And on the way, I'm going to try to get that down rolled inside the blanket so that exposes only the period area. I'll cover her upper legs with a towel. And then get my first washcloth. I'm gonna wring this out. And sew 5 corners. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, Ms. Jones, I'm going to clean now. I'll use the heel of my hand at the top of her hairy area and my index and middle finger to spread her slightly open so I can clean down the inside middle, top to bottom. And then we'll fold that leaf over. We're going to clean the outside labia, top to bottom, down one side and fold that over. The third leaf will clean the other side of the labia, top to bottom, fold that leaf over. The fourth leaf is going to clean this area between the leg and the groin, the skin fold, top to bottom. We're going to fold that over and we'll repeat it on this side, top to bottom. Now we'll place washcloth back on the berry. The second washcloth, we're going to wring out. And we're going to rinse all of those areas the same way we wash. So we're going to hold it slightly open to clean down the middle, top to bottom. Fold that over. We're going to rinse down one side of the labia, top to bottom. Fold that over. Rinse the other side of the labia, top to bottom. Fold that over. We're going to rinse the skin fold down one side, top to bottom. Fold that over. And the other skin fold, top to bottom. We'll set that aside. Now we're going to dry all of those areas using short, soft strokes or a gentle tap. I'm going to unroll the blanket, which will place her down back over her legs. Okay, Mrs. Jones, I'm going to scoot you toward me now, and we're going to roll you onto your left side so I can clean your back side. Go ahead and scoot toward me, and we're going to roll you over onto your left side. 1, 2, 3. The evaluator will hold the mannequin in place for you to complete your cleaning of the patient's backside. Okay, I'm going to take the fourth washcloth, bring it out really well, and we're going to sew 4 corners. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to start at the anal opening and go up the center crease, right at the middle, and we'll fold that leaf over. The second leaf will clean 1 buttocks. We're going to fold that over. The third leaf will clean the other side of the buttocks. We'll fold that leaf over. And the fourth leaf will clean from the anal opening up the center crease one last time. We're going to set that aside. Whatever we wash, we rinse. So I'll wring that out. And I'm going to rinse the same way we wash. So from the anal opening up the center crease, fold that over. 1 buttocks, fold that over. The other side of the buttocks, fold that over. And once more up the center crease. And then we'll dry all of those areas. Okay, Ms. Jones, I'm going to change that pad out from under you. Here on a nice clean pad. We'll roll the soiled chucks toward the patient and tuck it under her hip. Unroll the clean chucks and tuck it under the soil. Ms. Jones, come on back, please. And scoot to the middle. Thank you. Okay, Ms. Jones, go ahead and scoot toward me. And we'll up on your right side. 1, 2, 3. Thank you. We'll remove the soil chucks from the bed. And unroll the clean. Okay. Go ahead and scoot back to the middle, please. This is going to be thrown away. Okay, Michelle, I need to put all of my soiled items away and clean my basin. I'll be back in just a moment to get you situated. These items will go in dirty linen. And the basin is going to be cleaned the same way we clean everything else. We'll dump the water into the sink. Dump the basin. Take it up with a paper towel and dry the inside.
Okay.
We'll discard that paper towel. We'll dry the outside. And discard that paper towel. And then we'll get the soap. I'll use the paper towel that comes with the floor. Please pour the basin back inside. These paper towels will now throw away. Barrier is going to be disposed of. And now I can remove my glove. Okay, Michelle, I'm now going to gather the privacy blanket up and pull your sheet back up. So I'll apply the privacy blanket by lifting from the bottom or underside of the blanket. Pull the sheet up and ball the blanket up into a ball. That way no trailing edges will contaminate other surfaces. Okay, Michelle, let me go put this in 30 minutes. Are you comfortable? Is there anything else I can get for you while I'm here, like a magazine? Okay, here's your call light. If you should need anything at all, please let me know. I'm going to go open your curtain and wash my hands. After washing my hands, I'll think about the steps of my skill, make any corrections, and then let the evaluator know my skill is done. Okay, Brandel asked how many washcloths total. It's going to be, 4 washcloths. 1 to wash the front, so middle, side, skin fold, set that aside. 1 to rinse the front, middle, side, skin fold, set that aside. 1 to wash the back, up the middle, cheek, up the middle, set that aside, and 1 to rinse the back. Up the middle, cheek, up the middle. So 4 washcloths total. If you look on page 110 of the skills book, you'll see the supply list at the top of the page. And it lists 4 washcloths. All right, let's see here. Can I answer that one more time because I didn't have the screen on? So 4 washcloths, top of page 110 of your skills book, the white book, tells you your supplies for the skill. This one, it's 4 washcloths. Washcloth 1 is for washing the front. So middle, side, skin fold, set that aside. Washcloth number 2 is rinse the front. Middle, side, skin fold, set that aside. Turn the patient over. Washcloth number 3 is for the back side. We're gonna wash the back side. Up the middle crease, cheek, up the middle crease, set that aside. Washcloth number 4, rinse the exact same way and set it aside. So this skill can be done with 4 washcloths. All right, any other questions, guys? Any other questions? We only have 1 more week of class left. And if you're looking at your syllabus, we only have 3 skills left to learn. Range of motion. We're going to learn another range of motion. We learned 2 already. So we're going to learn another one, which is super easy. We're going to learn catheter care, which is what we just learned, pericare, with an extra step. We're going to clean the tubing. And we're going to learn how to empty the urinary drainage valve. So not much to learn on Monday. You're going to have about an hour and a half of practice on Monday. Well, remember that nothing goes back in the basin. the washcloths would go in 30 minutes. Yep. Yep. But it doesn't go back in the water.
Right.
So the water is just water.
Right.
Yeah, the water is just water.
They have made it steam, not really let it steam.
That's what she was talking about.
Okay, I'm saying this is, you, can you say, the, like, before you use the what's that?
You will do whatever your facility requires. Every facility is set up different. Some facilities will have wipes, and you'll use those. Some facilities don't have wipes at all, so you would have to use multiple washcloths. Every facility is gonna run a little bit different with the supplies that they have in place, and that's where the policy procedure comes in. Okay? For instance, I'll tell you another difference. If you go to work at a hospital, we don't give bed baths with soap and water like you learned in here. In a hospital, they have packages of bed wipes. They're not peri wipes. This is specific bed wipes. And there's two different kinds. One of them is just a regular cleansing product. But it's no rinse, so we don't have to rinse. The other one contains HCG, which is going to be used in high risk circumstances, and it provides a barrier on the skin, an extra barrier to keep from exposing the patient to harmful pathogens. So it's going to be up to the care plan what's required for each patient, but they don't use basins and soap and water and things like that. Their policy and procedure will tell you to do a partial bed bath with these wipes. And it's in a very specific order. It's actually printed on the package, exactly what to use the wipe, where to use it, how to use it, all of that. So remember that what we're learning in here are principles, a foundation that we're going to build on moving forward. Okay, but it really, when you're talking about BM, it really depends on the facility and the supplies that they have available. If they have wipes, then certainly I would use wipes before cleaning. Yeah, but we never put anything back in the basin. So, you know, if you're using washcloths, those BM washcloths are not going back in the basin, they're being set aside. Okay. But I'll tell you, using that leaves method with BM, way easier, because you can fold that, you know, you can wipe and fold, and it traps that, you know, the BM underneath, and now you've got another cleaning surface to work with.
I was always feeling like when we're switching back and forth, like the leg, like the leg should be wet too. But it's like the leg is really trapping the powerful.
You're talking about the back of the leg?
You know, whichever side the pad is hitting, should we wipe the leg too?
You can, but it's not a tested checkpoint. Like I said, in a clinical setting,
Yeah.
this is gonna be way more involved than what you see here. Because you're gonna be washing the patient down to the knees, front and back, you're gonna be changing the sheets, you're gonna be changing the gown, you know, because the gown is gonna get wet and it's gonna spread the urine down to the, it's gonna be a whole lot more involved. But for the test, they're just,
Want to see what you can actually do.
yeah, it has nothing to do with cleaning. This skill really has nothing to do with cleaning what's wet on the patient. It has everything to do with showing that you understand infection control. That we're gonna wipe from top to bottom and move away, that we understand the leaves method for different, changing the area of the washcloth for different strokes. That's what we're demonstrating here. It's not how much you clean, or, you know, it's more just showing that you understand the concepts. Good question. Any others? No? All right, it's not too bad, right? We're down to 3 skills. Look how far you've come. Look how far you guys need to be proud of yourselves. This is a huge accomplishment. You should be proud of yourselves. All right, I'm gonna pass out today's review sheet. Those of you who are joining on YouTube, you can head over to my online course. I put the course link in the chat. It's courses.foryourcna.com. And if you look in the first lesson, that's where the live stream is, and the review sheet should be in there for you as well. So you can download that if you'd like. to be able to play along. Remember, over the weekend, you have homework. You have chapters 8 and 9. 8 is on nutrition. It's a little bit complex. Make flashcards for the different diets. You need to learn the diets. 9 is on rehabilitation. You need to know patient positions. So sitting up as Fowlers, laying down on your back as supine, on the tummy as prone, on the side as lateral, you know, on the left side with leg drawn up as Sims. You need to know those. So make flashcards for those as well.
You didn't get flashcard copies?
No, they don't have those. No. No, but I probably should make flashcards for those. Good. Good question.
Your flashcard, you got it, where they have.
Our flashcards have, whoa, here, I'll give you that one. Thank you. So do you see the gray box there on the page? Yep, so my flashcards have the gray boxes for the steps. So here, you'll see the gray boxes for the steps. It has the supplies, and then it has the principles, which is everything on the back. Yeah, that's next door. Yeah, it's $14.99 right now until you graduate.
And what else do you suggest about?
If you're not gonna come in and practice, the practice kit. Because it has the gait belt, it has your basins, it has the toothbrush, the tooth deck, the emery board, the orange stick, the chucks, the drainage bag, gloves, everything you need to practice is in that kit. So in here, you can practice, all the stuff is here. But if you aren't gonna come in and practice, the kit would be a really good way for you to familiarize yourself with the supplies. And then I have another resource that makes studying a whole lot more fun. And that's the card game. Now the card game is these principles. So it's called the CNA Principles Card Game. And it's kind of like rummy. Have you ever played rummy? Like rummy? You have to, so each one of these has a certain number of principles. Like if you look at scoop and roll, there's 4. If you look at glove rules, there's 4. If you look at closing, there's 9, right? 9 parts to it. Well, in this card game, you collect all of the principles in a set. Okay. So you're going to draw cards and you're going to discard to get the cards to form your set. Now, that sounds easy enough, but kind of boring. So you have to avoid the crappy caregivers. Crappy caregivers are going to count against you. And these are all traits that are what we call negative employment traits. Clicks, showing up late, talking back, not following policies, procedures, those types of things. Those will count against you. And then you've got specialty cards like HIPAA violations, fire drill, that have you do, it affects everybody when somebody plays one of those cards, and it can really derail. Like if you think, if you're collecting all the washing rules, right, and somebody plays the fire drill card, you have to give them all of your washing rules. So they can end up with a complete set. HIPAA violation. If somebody plays a HIPAA violation, then it affects the next person. And that means that you have to announce what set you're working on. So then nobody's going to discard that card.
Do you ever have a game night?
What's that?
Do you ever have a game night?
No, but that's a really good idea. I'd like to do that. But right now, the card game, I normally sell it for $29.99. It's $19.99 right now. But you can play it at home with family and friends. You don't have to play it with just CNAs, because they'll just play with the numbers and the colors. Like blue, there's not, there's 7 blue, right? They're just going to collect the number color. For CNAs, it actually allows you to learn all of those principles. Give me a second. Let me go get one. Okay. this is part. This is like, it can get really cutthroat when you're playing, because I've worked in a lot of to it. It can get really cutthroat when you're playing. It can get really fun. So there's 2 decks. You have to use both because there's a lot of principles. Okay. Here's a brand new deck. It has your instructions right there. And it's actual playing cards. Yeah. No, like they're super slippery. So hold on, I'll show you how it's played. In fact, we'll let the people at home kind of watch too. So I'm gonna move the camera here. Okay. I don't know if you guys will be able to see at home, but show you how this works. So if you look here, I played this with some friends of mine, and we had a lot of fun with it. It was actually, I developed the game, but it was actually more fun than I thought it was gonna be. So here, you can see this is shoe rolls, right? Yeah, you guys can come over. Ah, they're really slippery because they're playing cards. And they're brand new. So here, you can see there's 1 of 8, 2 of 8, 3 of 8, 4 of 8, 5 of 8, 6 of 8, 7 of 8, and 8 of 8. You can actually see the numbers. That's what your friends and family have played. They don't care about the rest of it. But if you look here, 1 of 8, if their feet hit the floor, we talk about their shoes. 2 of 8, slipper socks are not enough. 3 of 8, 4 fingers between the gait belt and patient. 4, feet must be flat on the floor before standing. 5, count to 3 before lifting. 6, ask if they're dizzy or weak after standing and while walking. 7, patient must feel the chair behind them before sitting. 8, use proper body mechanics. It is exactly what that banner says, right? So these are the banners. So in addition to that, so you've got all of these principles that you can collect, right? And you also have specialty cards. So HIPAA violation. You talked about a patient in public at lunch. Show everyone your cards and skip your turn. So if you're working on, let's say you're trying to get shoe rules, right? And I play that card. Now you've got to show everybody that you're working on shoe rules. The next person, they're not going to discard a card that you need because they know you're working on it. Oops, you forgot to document your I's and O's during your shift. You must discard all cards with a number 1 or number 2 in your hand. Care plan catastrophe. You didn't follow care plan and now your patient is in distress. So that means that so this is a very unique card. If you pull this card, you can't get rid of it. This is now going to count against you. You can't trade it off to somebody else because a care plan is your mistake. It's all you. So if you get this card, you're stuck with it for the entire game. And at the end of the hand, it's going to count against you. It's going to take a point off of your score. And you can't do anything about it. So it shows everybody starts out with 8. But this shows that how important that care plan is. It's going to have a long-term effect on you. Right. Your patient reported a jewelry theft. Everyone pass a treasured card to the left. So anything, you got to pass a card on that you don't want to give up. You took too long to answer a call light. Everyone passed a card to the right. This one would allow you to get rid of a card you don't want. Except for that one, yeah. Fire drill. We need water to put out the fire. Collect washing roll cards from all other players. Play this card to draw an extra 4 cards from the deck during your turn if you need a helping hand. You pass the exam on the first try. Ask one neighbor for a card. They aren't allowed to lie. When we work as a team, everyone wins. Do you need a card? Ask for one from a friend. Your Heimlich saved a choking child. Your reward is this wild.
What is the wild?
Wild can take the place of any one of these set cards. So you've got the 4 wilds, and then you've got crappy caregivers. And there's 9 crappy caregivers. And remember, your goal is to get rid of these. You don't want these in your hand because they're going to subtract a point from your score. So you kind of get the idea. So let me show you how this works. Do you guys want to see a demonstration?
That's why I was gonna have game, because I feel like the people that are,
Yeah. This really is a great way to learn this game. And
You don't have any of the skill, right? Individual carry.
yeah, well, the steps are on the flashcards. The steps are on the flashcards. Okay. I need 1 or 2 people that want to play. Real quick, we'll play hands together. You want to play? I need another person. And we'll do this together. We won't make it a serious game, right? I'm gonna help you out. Yeah. Can you just kind of turn that camera just a little bit that way? Just turn the camera. Yeah. Yeah. Keep going. A little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. That's good. Okay. All right. So if I'm dealing, we're all gonna get 8 cards. So 1, 2. You wouldn't show anybody your cards. We will right now just because we're learning. Okay. So 4, 4, 4, 5, 5, 5, 6, 6, 6, 7, 7, 8, 8, 8, and then we have discard pile. Okay. Now, because I dealt, you go first. So you're going to look at this and you're going to figure out, do you want this card? If you want the card, you can pick it up. If you don't want the card, you're going to pick from here.
Okay.
Okay. So you kind of have to figure out, this has got 8, 8 principles. That's a lot of cards to collect.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, you can't win the game until you have at least 1 set of 7 or more cards, or 2 sets that at least equal 7 or more. So if you have like barrier and glove rules, that would work, but barrier alone won't. Okay, so you have no blue
But I
cards.
do have a nice one.
Ah, that's gonna help you later. So you're gonna wanna pick one of these. And then you gotta pick one to discard. So which one of those do you not want to collect? I would say the closing. You got a good start on the opening, so I would get rid of the closing. Right. So, do you know what group you're gonna go for?
Yes, it's 2.
Okay, so is either one of these one that you're going for? Okay, so you don't wanna pick up the pile. You can't just pick up the top card, you have to pick up everything. So you wanna pick one of these. And then you need to discard something.
Yeah, discard it.
Yep. Okay, so nobody's going for closing. Okay, now if you look, I have a closing one.
Oh, yeah.
So if I pick that up, I would have 2 more. And I don't really have anything else to go for here because I don't have any other options, no other set. So I'm gonna go ahead and pick that up. And now remember, which one counts against you? Crappy
Oh, okay.
caregiver. So I'm gonna make sure I get rid of that.
So you can take as many as you need and get rid of.
You're gonna take,
take
well, you're
whatever's
gonna
in the
take
pile.
one here or the whole pile.
Yeah.
And just get rid of one. And just get rid of one.
Care paying, okay, so I can get rid
Oh,
of that one?
no, that's the
Oh,
one you're stuck with.
okay.
So no matter what happens in the game,
Ah,
you're gonna be, minus 1 point,
okay,
no matter what happens in the game.
and now I have to get rid
So
of
now you
one.
gotta discard one. So you're gonna pull one.
Yeah, get rid of it.
Yep. Now you're gonna see how this affects it, right? Cause nobody wants a care, or no one wants craft caregiver. So we keep discarding them. Now, if I put down a card that you want, you've gotta pick up that whole pile, which brings all of those crappy caregivers into your hand. It's gonna take you a long time to get rid of them. Because crappy caregivers take a long time to get rid of. You start to see that there's a lot of,
Yeah, this is true, I've worked with them.
yeah. So this is an opening. I really don't want an opening, so we're gonna get rid of the opening.
So I'm gonna take the open.
Nope, you gotta take the whole pile.
Ah, Let me rethink this. Maybe I'll just go sit here. Oh, what?
Okay, so the next round, you're gonna wanna pick up the whole pile,
Yeah,
probably. So you have to discard one.
Oh.
What if we got all the crappy caregivers?
You wanna discard them.
Yeah. That's not impossible.
Yeah, you can't collect that as a set.
Yeah.
Yeah, it actually says not a collectible set. Okay, so I am going to play the penalty card. So this is gonna apply to you.
Okay,
This is, you forgot to document your I's and O's during your shift, so anything in your hand with a 1 or a 2, you have to get rid of. And then we skip your turn, so it goes on top, and we skip your turn. Now remember, you can pick the pile up the next time around.
get all the crappy.
My turn. Okay, so I'll go ahead and play this one so we can see how it works. So your patient reported a jewelry theft. Everyone pass a treasured card to the left. So that means it can't be, a crappy caregiver or something like that. So look in your hand and pass a good card off to somebody.
Now,
Yeah,
do I have to get rid of the wild or I pick something else?
no, you can pick something else. It just
Okay.
can't be a crappy caregiver. All right, so it's your turn.
Now, what the heck? Yeah, and then I will get rid of.
Crappy caregiver, right? Very good. You're catching on quick.
Yeah,
So you can have as many cards in your hand.
Oh,
as you
yeah.
want to.
yeah.
Yeah, you can have tons of cards in your hand, but remember, you're trying to build a set, right? And you're gonna get 1 point for each card in the set, but you're gonna subtract 1 point for every crappy caregiver you have.
That's going on like Monopoly.
Yeah,
I
a
was
little
thinking
bit.
it's
Yeah, it
all
goes on
like
for a
that.
little bit of time, yeah.
And there's some
So you'll wanna pick a
cards.
card. I definitely don't want this one right.
No,
Okay, now I would not normally know what she's going for, right? I would not know that she's looking for the opening, cause she would have her cards up. So I would, because I'm not going for the opening, I would discard that.
and then I could, but I have
You
to
can
pick
pick it up,
everything.
yep, take the whole thing.
Yeah, get rid of my crappy one.
Okay,
Even
so
though
I want
have
you,
3 more.
yeah, I want you to pay attention now, right? Cause you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out of 8,
Mhm.
and you've got a wild.
Oh, yeah.
So you only need 2 more cards to win. So keep that in mind. But you've also got 2 crappies, so that means it's gonna take 2 points away.
Plus I'm gonna fill in.
What is it, 8 cards?
Well, this one has.
It's 7 or more,
Yeah.
but you can only lay down a set when it's complete.
Mhm.
So I'm going for the closing, so I am going to pick that up and then get rid of this. So you can see, you can end up with a lot of cards in your hand.
Oh, yeah. So I can do this. No, I still need one more card.
Yeah, you're getting close though. And you're getting rid of your crappy caregivers, so.
Ah.
What I'm gonna do though, the reason I'm not gonna play that is because I know she's getting really close. And I've been watching her pick up those green ones, so I know she's getting close. So I'm going to give her a violation.
That's good.
So show everyone your cards, which you did, and skip your turn. So now everybody knows that she is looking for one more green card. So nobody is gonna play that card if we get it in our hands. There are no friends in this game. So there's a lot of strategy involved in this. No, I do not have privacy blanket, so we'll get rid of that one.
Oh. But I don't know that you have a closing. right?
Yeah, you wouldn't know. Although,
yeah.
remember, I picked up the stack and it
Oh,
had some
yeah.
closings, so if you paid attention,
Yeah,
you would know that I do.
yeah, you go.
Oh.
Drop it down.
You
Yeah.
stopped to discard, yep. Oh my, okay. So I am going for, so I have to show everybody my cards. Here's my cards. So now everybody knows that I'm going for the red, right? And it skips me.
Okay. Not everyone pass a card to the right.
Okay, so
They're
here.
good, okay.
Yeah, everybody pass a card to the right. So, nope, that's the left.
Oh.
That way.
I get the cranky.
Okay, I know that she's looking for this, so I am absolutely not gonna play that.
That's right.
There you could get another one
Oh,
too.
you got it. 8 out of 8, and I got a wild card.
Okay, so you would play that, you're gonna put it face, up for everybody to see,
Okay.
and that ends, well, you have to discard.
Oh, okay,
You still have
well,
this
I
card.
still
Yep.
have that one.
Okay, so that ends the hand.
Okay,
So you would get 8 points,
okay,
and we would subtract however many crappy caregivers you had left in your hand.
okay.
But you
Then
don't
I
have
that
any,
one. So I
you
have a,
but you do have the care plan catastrophe, so that
Okay.
subtracts 1. So
okay,
you in the score in the game was 7 points.
okay,
Okay. You have a crappy caregiver, you in the score with, or in the round with -1.
Okay.
I don't have anything, so I end the round with 0.
okay.
And then we would shuffle and play again until somebody reaches 40.
Okay.
Or whatever, you can decide, you can pick a number, but 40 is,
Well, you can play with family, so you
Yeah,
get to
see,
see
you know.
what I have to do every day.
Yeah.
isn't that neat?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Took me a long time to devise it, to come up with all of the different, it's just collecting the principles, that was kind of boring, if it was just collecting stuff. So you need stuff to spice it up, and you have to have things to avoid.
Yeah.
And then you had to work on the strategy part of it, what can I do to make strategy? So paying attention to what people pick up, right? What they pick up on the stacks, because you have to pay attention to your patients,
Yeah.
right? Good observation skills. So every part of this actually goes right back into my teaching.
Yeah. No crappy caregivers.
No crappy caregivers. And they're, professionally, they're actual professional card game. I had to order like 5,000 of these things.
Oh, wow.
I bought 'em. Yeah. So I have lots of them. Anybody want to buy some? Yeah. Well, I'll have these here. let me just, Yeah, I'll have this up here. You guys, during practice time or when you come into practice, you can certainly play it. I'll just keep it right here. And you're welcome to play a game if you want to play a game. It's there for you. All right, any other questions? I didn't want to eat up all your practice time. All right, the room is yours. Feel free to practice if you need to leave. That's the other thing, during practice time, it's adult ed. I can't make you stay, right? It's adult education, you can leave anytime. But if you're not practicing here, please make sure you're practicing somewhere because practice really is key. Okay? All right. Anybody sing?
Work's already called me twice. so-
Yeah, I know.
But I wanted to ask about the skill plan.
Oh, Wilma, I'm so sorry. I didn't even think about that. I apologize. Yeah, I didn't have my microphone on, so they couldn't really hear real well. I'm sorry, guys. And Brandel, so the washcloths, no, 2 to wash and 2 to rinse. So the first one washes the front, the second one rinses the front, the third one washes the back, the second one the fourth one rinses the back. So wash 1, rinse 2, wash 3, rinse 4. Sorry about that, guys. I'm still trying to get used to broadcasting. Yeah, you got, you're slippery. So here you got the steps. Okay. On this one, you would have the supplies. And then these are the steps for these are those. Right. Right. These are your grade boxes in the book. Okay. So these are the grade boxes and the supplies. So this and this and you don't have anything like that. Okay, so what's the character? Yeah, I don't have these yet. Okay. But it's would be in here. Okay. Okay. And yes, the next time I order the flashcards, I'm going to add these. I just created these right before your class. Oh, okay. This is new. I'm always creating new things for you. Okay. So, let me get, yeah. Right, well, good luck on prior, procedure. Okay. So I need 5. We can get that next time, that's fine. Do you have 6? Yeah. 6 is 100. Okay, what about 7? Okay, when you come in on Monday, I'll just get 6 and or 5 and 7. Okay. Okay. I don't collect those scores, it's more for you. But did it help?
I can come before on Monday.
Let me sign off on YouTube and I'll be happy to go over that. with you.
Okay.
Okay, YouTube people, thank you for joining us. If you've got any questions, put them in the chat. If not, I'm gonna go ahead and sign off so the students can come in here, can come over and practice. So if you've got any questions, put them in the chat really quickly. If not, we're gonna go ahead and sign off. Make sure you join me tomorrow at 3 o'clock for our live question and answer session. I'm gonna be talking about LPN to RN as a career path and the advantages and disadvantages of it. So make sure you tune into that, and I'll also be answering questions. But you definitely want to tune in tomorrow because we're doing our live unboxing of our YouTube play button for hitting 100,000 subscribers. So make sure you tune in tomorrow. I did get I did get it, but I haven't opened it yet. It's still sealed. We're gonna do a live unboxing together. So hope to see you for that. All right, I don't see any questions. It looks like everybody's getting off. So until next time, guys, happy caregiving. Bye.